Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, thank you to Mark Dolan. Welcome back to the home of common sense. The Christmas tree is up, as you can see behind me, and everything is kicking off. The news agenda doesn't stop, even if it's the festive season, including this little beauty. Keir Starmer urging the modernisation of the ECHR, saying current interpretations are not good enough and it's hindering deportations. Meanwhile, a watchdog has put asylum costs at nearly 5 billion quid for the last financial year. I mean, the numbers and the story is disastrous, whichever way you cut it. We'll be looking into that in just a couple of moments. Elsewhere, an NHS leader has said that anyone with flu or cold symptoms should wear a mask in public amidst early and a nasty flu wave. Apparently it's terrible out there, you might die. He has stated that if you are coughing and sneezing but still going to work, mask up like Billio in public spaces. Are you with or without the mask? More on that too. And dozens of pubs and restaurants are banning Labour MPs from entering their premises in a bit of a backlash over high taxes. I love this. The No Labour MPs Allowed stickers seem to be going up everywhere, as around 50 venues have already signed up on their behalf. A bit tricky if you're a Labour MP and the local pub has one up and it's your constituency. We'll look into that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Can I just say this? Everybody, put down whatever you're doing, unless you're driving in your car. Keep your hand on the wheel. Every now and again, there is a moment of genius when a political leader deals out an impressive dose of wisdom. These moments go down in history. Those impressive men and women who have been to the mountaintop and sealed their name in the history books for the rest of time. They don't just talk and lecture, they impart a game-changing, a tangible sense and feeling of things being different. If they're going through hell, they'll keep going. Those people are not for turning, whose efforts and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. All of that. The greats, the Premier League orators of our time, and I alluded to a few there, JFK, Thatcher, Martin Luther King. Today, a new name joins that list of the greats. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I kid you not, Keir Starmer has just signed for Real Madrid in the League of Political Wisdom. He's come out with an absolute beauty, an unparalleled piece of sharp thinking to rival all others. Are you ready for this? Today, Keir Starmer said... No, hang on a sec. Can we have a drum roll, please, for this? Today, Keir Starmer said, here it is, the European Convention on Human Rights must be reformed. God, he's good! How good is that man? Let me say this again. The European Convention on Human Rights must be reformed. The man's absolute flipping genius. Move over Plato. Get in the bin, Shakespeare. Do one, Churchill. Because we've got Starmer on the block now. Starmer is back in town and he means business. The European Convention on Human Rights must be reformed. The man is a messiah of our times. He says we need this to combat illegal immigration. His brain just gets bigger by the second. This was actually a joint article that he's written with his Danish counterpart. Do you know who the Danish leader is? Come on, hands up at the back. Oh, come on, it's Mette Frederiksen. Everybody knew that, didn't they? Well, the two of them have said the ECHR must be modernised as part of a tougher approach to migration to prevent voters from turning to the forces that seek to divide us. Oh, for God's sake. So in order to stop the forces that seek to divide us, i.e. anyone who might be concerned about mass immigration and the potentials that come with it, thinking of a couple of rapes, a couple of sexual assaults, that kind of thing. And if you're concerned about that, you are a divisive kind of character. Sir Keir and Mr Frederiksen also called other European leaders to agree a modernisation of how the convention is interpreted in their country's law. Can I just ask you this firstly? I've got a couple of points to add. Will leaving the ECHR solve immigration? Do you think if we left that convention, it will solve are immigration problems? 0344 499 1000. Dial us up on that one now. The ECHR, of course, underpins the UK Human Rights Act, and it's seen by many, i.e. all of us, as a major barrier to attempt to deport illegal immigrants. I mean, some of the stories, I'm thinking Article 8 in particular, that's the right to a family life, which is so flexible, it's so one-size-fits-allable that it's not really worth the paper it's written on. You can sort of have no family and claim your right to a family life has been breached. I mean, who said a family couldn't just be one person? So you've got all of this going on. Meanwhile, and this just yet again layer upon layer of chaos at the Home Office on immigration, Keir Starmer, the whole lot. I know this was going on under Sunak and stuff, but boy, has it got a whole lot worse. Meanwhile, the Home Office has no idea how many asylum seekers have gone missing since arriving in this country. I mean, we talk about the Home Office having a legal obligation. It's to keep the country safe, to know who's coming in. That just goes with the territory. That is part and parcel of your gig. That's almost, you know, in that particular respect, if you work in that specific department of the Home Office, keeping people safe and guarding our borders is absolutely fundamental to existence in this country, has been forever. But this damning report reveals woeful failings in Britain's asylum process, with huge gaps in systems, key data that doesn't even exist. And there are two major things we learn from this report. Both of these are jaw-dropping, by the way. New figures reveal asylum costs to the taxpayer. This is for the last financial year, 24-25. £4.9 billion, so just shy of £5 billion, mostly providing taxpayer-funded migrant hotel and accommodation. By the way, £5 billion is just shy of a quarter of the Treasury's black. A quarter of the Treasury's black hole. So when she gave that budget the other week, she could have actually solved a quarter of it on this. And this next one defies belief, that the Home Office do not hold complete data on the number who abscond from the asylum system. So you put in a hotel and half an hour later you leg it. They don't know that. They don't know who that is. Excuse me, Home Office, how many people absconded? We don't know. Well, how many were in there this morning? 35. How many in there now? 29. I'd say that's 6, wouldn't you? I think, could you not write that down on a bit of paper? I mean, if I check into the Holiday Inn, they know how many people are in the flipping hotel, and they definitely know if I try to leg it without paying, because they know one's gone missing. Oh, the fella in room 46 he's not there anymore. They know the numbers. Apparently not if you've come over on a boat. And of course, there's a far more serious edge to this than just people staying in hotels. These are people, we don't know who they are, their background, anything about them at all. They do not hold the complete data on the number who've absconded from asylum hotels. Let that just sink in. 0344 499 1000. And will leaving the ECHR solve immigration? Do you think that one move in itself will be enough to clear the decks and put us back to a semblance of normality? Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Chloe Dobbs back with us, 'cause it's a Wednesday. Political commentator and all-round good person. Chloe, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. Well, let's start on this curious story of Starmer's wisdom, saying the ECHR must be modernised to help tackle illegal immigration. Let's have a listen to what he said back in September on this very issue.
Mr. Speaker, we will not withdraw from the European Convention of Human Rights. We do need to make sure that both the Convention and other instruments are fit for the circumstances we face at the moment, and therefore, of course, we have been, as we made clear, looking at the interpretation of some of those provisions. It would be a profound mistake to pull out of these instruments, because the first thing that would follow is every other country in the world that adheres to these instruments would pull out of all their agreements with this country. That would be catastrophic for dealing with the problem that we're actually dealing with.
Well, he's theorising there, of course, Chloe, but it is interesting because in a couple of months from when he said that, he's now saying we've got to kind of, perhaps modernise the ECHR. I don't think it means very much at all, if I'm perfectly honest. It's a bit like when people say, well, we'll renegotiate Brexit and things like that, stuff that sounds like you mean business, but actually when you dig a little deeper, there's absolutely naff all there.
Yeah, I'm going to back Starmer up slightly and say I don't think that he's done a U-turn and been inconsistent. Look, at the end of the day, this man is a human rights lawyer. He is. I would be absolutely gobsmacked if he suddenly came out and said, we need to leave the ECHR. That is not what he is saying. What he's essentially saying is we need to reform the ECHR slightly so that when we have ridiculous cases where you can't deport somebody who is a criminal because their son doesn't like Albanian chicken nuggets, for example, that maybe we need to change that slightly. I don't think so. The Council of Europe have just come out and said actually we support this idea. We think it's a good thing. I mean, a lot of European countries, they're having huge numbers of issues with this. It's just not suitable for this day and age. But what they seem to be talking about is changing it so that people who are convicted criminals can be deported. You can't use your ties to the country, right to a family life and all of this to stop yourself being deported if you're a convicted criminal. But does turning up at someone's shore as an illegal migrant, does that make you a criminal by making an illegal crossing? No, it doesn't.
But don't we, in that respect,
so most people are going to, it's not going to make much difference to most illegal migrants.
Do we not just have to sort of have a word with judges and say, look, can you just be a little bit more logical when you employ the Article 8, for example, and CAF makes a point here. Happy Christmas to CAF, by the way. He says all we have to do is ignore the ECHR like other European countries when it suits them. And if they did fine us, it would be cheaper than £5 billion a year.
So I absolutely think that is the first step. You saw how long it took us to leave the European Union, right? Leaving the ECHR is not something that's going to take 5 minutes. We'll have to come up with all our own human rights legislation and everything. And I'm sure it would be a long, painstaking process. I think it needs to be done. But what can we do in the interim? We should just be ignoring the ECHR. But let's be realistic. When you have a human rights lawyer as Prime Minister, there's absolutely no way that he's going to say, yeah, just put two fingers up to the ECHR, we're not going to listen to them. He's never going to do that.
He can't
if another party were in power, then fine. I wish the Tories would have done it.
He can't unsee what he already, what he's been doing for 20, 30 years. That's ingrained there for the rest of the time. Many people similarly making the point. Jim says the ECHR doesn't stop Starmer from stopping immigration. He uses it to maintain immigration. There is some absolutely spot-on cynicism around all of that, but the broader point is true. Even if you remain in the ECHR, stopping people floating across the channel in rubber dinghies, there are other ways to stop that. You wouldn't even get to the stage where you needed somebody to invoke the ECHR because they wouldn't be in the country in the first place.
Yeah, look, what you really need is a change to you need to get rid of the Refugee Convention saying that anyone who turns up from a country that is a war zone or whatnot, that they have a right to stay. Because the reality is, even if we just say yes to people who are coming from really awful countries, it's still going to be a huge number. I think we need to change which countries we allow. So, for example, the highest number of asylum seekers are actually from Pakistan, and it kind of goes under the radar because they're not really coming across on the boats. They're coming in legally on things like, say, student visas and various short-term visas, and then claiming asylum whilst they're here. But I don't think that Pakistan should be on that list. But nevertheless, even if you got rid of that, if you said we're willing to take every single person from Afghanistan that turns up because they've got the Taliban there, it's not a safe country, it just wouldn't be feasible to save all of those people and take all of those people. It's just not possible. And so that has to go. We have to get rid of the Refugee Convention and reform it and just say, if we're going to take refugees, it's going to be X number. That's what we can cope with, no more than that. And it's legal routes only. If you turn up illegally, I'm sorry, you're going back. You've got to apply by a legal route.
Yeah, and that sounds perfectly reasonable. One wonders why Number 10 aren't discussing this point in those very tones. Let's look at this story as well. It's a big one. The CEO of NHS providers says mask wearing should return from anyone with flu or cold-like symptoms. I don't know how we've survived up to this point without doing this. This is amid a, quote, tidal wave of illnesses with a nasty flu strain hitting early in warm, wet school term conditions. Here he is, have a listen, spouting this mask-based nonsense.
When you were talking about it being like COVID, I think we need to get back into the habit that if you are coughing and sneezing, but you're not unwell enough to not go to work, then you must wear a mask when you're in public spaces, including on public transport, to stop the chances of you giving your virus to somebody else.
I mean, I'm confused about this, Chloe, because this guy's just reeled this off in the most casual manner to stop giving your flu to someone else. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with the ineptitude of this statement. I mean, we know about the controversy of mask wearing. What did we do? Before COVID, nobody was telling you to wear masks in winter. We know that their efficacy at best is tiny. And of course, I don't believe this man necessarily knows what he's talking about, to be honest. I mean, he's not a clinician, he's not a biologist or a germologist, whatever the heck they're called.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he comes from a healthcare environment where you will have doctors and nurses wearing masks and gloves and whatnot, and so that's normal to him. But for those of us who are just operating in our day-to-day lives, it's quite a different experience. And for me, one of the most infuriating things about that COVID era was all of the Karens, as we call them. So I mean, sometimes I get a little bit of hay fever and I'll sneeze when I'm actually not ill. What would happen is then I'll sneeze on public transport, and then suddenly a bunch of angry people will start lecturing like, where's your mask? Why are you on public transport without a mask on? How dare you? You're going to make us all sick and make all the grannies die. I hated that about COVID, and I do not want to go back to that. Also, you know, with masks initially, when we started using them during COVID, we thought, maybe they're very effective, maybe it's a really good thing. But actually, I think we figured out, I know there are various different opinions, but figured out that they don't do very much. And if anything, I think it moves things in the opposite direction, because it gives people a false sense of security. So they think, I'm really ill and I've got horrible flu, but I can go to mask and sneeze and cough everywhere because it's fine, I've got a mask on. When actually, you should say, can I either take the day off or have a work from home day today? Yeah. So that I don't infect everybody. And when you're on public transport, you know, maybe you should not be on public transport and cycle instead, or as I say, have a work from home day, or at least keep a distance from people, so that you're not coughing and sneezing all over people, rather than thinking I can sit next to everybody and be all up close to them because I've got a mask on, it's fine. Also, the other thing that people do is, rather than wearing a proper mask, they'll have like a piece of fabric that is literally crawling with bacteria that they haven't washed for the past 2 years, and they're like, oh, I'll put that on my face, this little tea cloth on my face, that will keep everyone safe.
Yeah, I got a West Ham scarf, I'm wearing that, that's why. Let's have a reminder, by the way, this is Boris Johnson talking about enforcing face coverings. This is 5.5 years ago. Here he is.
We will also extend the requirement to wear a face covering to other indoor settings where you're likely to come into contact with people you do not normally meet, such as museums, galleries, cinemas, and places of worship. We now recommend face coverings are worn in these settings, and this will become enforceable in law from the 8th of August.
Yes, there you go. There it is, Chloe, and that worked out really well, didn't it? Because obviously nobody got COVID after that big announcement. I mean, it was such tripe, and I think, you know, there's enough clinicians out there to say, look, you know, the reason surgeons and doctors wear masks are for completely different reasons as to why, you know, you're asking somebody or asking a virus to, you know, suddenly stop almost Pixar cartoon style in its tracks, you know, with a sort of sound effect of a handbrake turn. Oh God, there's somebody with a mask, I'll turn back and go and infect somebody who hasn't got it. I mean, it's just such utter tripe. And if they were serious about masks, you know, they'd be telling you to wear one of those hazmat suits or something that actually worked. There'd be depositories for masks on the streets. There'd be machines that dispense them for free, because these were absolute grade A masks that cannot be penetrated by Vince the virus at any stage. I mean, it's all of those factors that, of course, led to the distrust of this. I would be intrigued to know, Chloe, we are going to be back with you shortly with some more stories. I'd be intrigued to know if you are a mask wearer. 0344 499 1000. What do you think about this idea that you've got a head honcho over there at the NHS saying mask wearing in public places for coughs and sneezes because we've got a very nasty flu going on out there? I mean, what are we trying to do to our nation? What are we trying to do to our people? And, you know, how dare these people bring back the horrendous, horrific, destructive memories of that awful period that we were forced to go through? Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. And can Keir Starmer finally save immigration? Can he solve immigration? 0344 499 1000.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, Talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. We have Chloe Dobbs with us looking at the big stories of the day. Let's move to this one, Chloe. The council that cancelled Christmas. This is Portsmouth City Council ordering residents to strip down their decorations because they breach health and safety rules. This is sort of in kind of shared accommodation apartments and flats and the like. So if you stick a thing on your front door, you might think it's only on your front door, but it's a sort of shared space, and somebody might fall over and bump into some holly or knock off one of your bells. So they've told residents you can't do it. One family received a formal notice demanding they remove a wreath and a small decoration hung outside their door because rules mean no personal property can be left in communal areas. I mean, how have they got time for this? Aside from anything else, where do they find the time to even write the flipping letter?
Because some people, Ian, have full-time jobs to do this and sit around all day and go, what else can we put on our risk assessment? We need to find some more risks because it's 10 o'clock and I'm here till 5 o'clock. What else can I put on my risk assessment? Maybe some holly on someone's door might prick someone if they walk past and they get brushed by. I'm sorry, but it's just utterly ridiculous, okay? Like, there is just no way that you can have... It's Christmas, we're in a Christian country, right? And you're just ruining the fun for everybody.
How did it get to the point when somebody said, oh, that's a health and safety concern? I mean, seriously, I know we bang on about the stupidity of petty rules and daft bureaucracy and mandarins sitting there in offices of the council or the government, almost inventing health and safety problems or issues that they can then rally against, perhaps justifying their jobs. I don't know what it is. But how did anyone ever, with a straight face, write a letter to the resident telling them to take their wreath down because it sits partly in a communal area?
It's just ridiculous. I'm sorry, whoever did that, you need to...
Go to jail.
Not go to jail, but actually just put a smile on your face and treat people nicely. I know that this is some grumpy cow in the admin office who just wants to take out their problems on other people by thinking, how can I be mean to people today? Or I'll tell them to take down all of their Christmas decorations. It's just ridiculous. And look, when you do risk assessments, so if you're doing the risk assessment for a block of flats, you do not have to eliminate every single possible risk. You have to be within reason. It's perfectly fine to accept there are a few risks, but we accept that these are small, right? If we all lived a life where we said we're not going to have any risks whatsoever, then we wouldn't get out and drive our cars. We wouldn't leave the house, right? We make informed decisions. And surely allowing people to have their Christmas decorations up, something that's very important to them, is something that would be an informed assessment of risk.
Bang on. I mean, it's as simple as that, isn't it? But, you know, they're obviously not listening down there at Council HQ, so common sense. And this one, Rachel Reeves has told the Treasury Committee this morning that she met the Prime Minister 2 or 3 times a week and agreed the tax rises as a team. She's accused of breaching Labour's manifesto with 3-year threshold freeze, of course, and faces calls to quit over claims that she inflated that fiscal black hole to justify the big 30 billion tax raid to fund welfare. Let's have a listen to her this morning, comparing her budget to her budget last year.
I was very clear that everyone would have to make a contribution. And you saw that in the budget on the 26th of November. We froze for an additional 3 years the tax thresholds, national insurance and income tax, that the previous government had frozen for 7 years. We extended that for a further 3 years. That's not a breach of the manifesto.
I'm keeping every single promise on tax that I made in our manifesto. So there will be no extension of the freeze in income tax and national insurance thresholds beyond the decisions by the previous government.
Now, we don't like to use the word lie, Chloe, but clearly inept might be there somewhere. Or could she just fess up and go, do you know what, it got a bit rough, I had no choice?
I mean, she seems completely incapable, this woman, of having any humility and taking any accountability whatsoever. Every single U-turn that she's made, she's not really been able to just put her hands up and say, look, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. She's been completely incapable of accepting that any of the tax hikes that we are seeing now are a consequence of her budget or any of the issues in the economy. Like, hello, we've got unemployment at its highest since the pandemic. That is clearly as a result of hikes to the national insurance contributions from employers and the minimum wage, but she's completely unwilling to accept that.
Yes, she is completely unwilling to accept that, isn't it? It would just be so nice if a politician had a very different approach to these things, but, you know, I think we expect nothing less from this government. Chloe, thank you very much indeed. Chloe Dobbs, political commentator with us on the programme. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. Polly says, if you got flu, you shouldn't be out anyway. Yeah, if you got full-blown flu, you wouldn't want to be, you couldn't be out, could you? I mean, flu, influenza. Which is why we're asking this afternoon, what's your favourite plague? This as well from Trevor. Good, we're not, by the way, but I would go bubonic every time. This comes from Trevor, who makes this point. All I received from wearing a mask was the worst breakout of acne ever. Yeah, it did have lots of kind of self-destructive effects. I think you sort of gave yourself a bit of a cold, didn't you? Because all your germs were going sort of into this bit of cloth. And then how long did you keep a face mask for? You know, if you started one, if you opened a fresh batch of face masks on, I don't know, 2019, I kept one for 5 years. It was a beauty, it was an absolute stunning little bit of, I named it and everything. Kenneth, I called it. It was a lovely little mask. Never washed that beast. Refused to. I will not comply. I will not comply. I kept saying this thing was as manky as a ferret's foot. I'm telling you, you wouldn't have gone near this thing. Nobody was going to come near me anyway. By this, stunk like a flipping polecat. So nobody came near me, so I couldn't have got it. I couldn't have given it. Therefore, it sort of had that kind of effect. The laws of unintended consequences. Vinny says, if you're coughing and sneezing, you should not be at living work. No, you shouldn't, really. If it's that bad. I mean, influenza, I've never had influenza. Proper, you have man flu, which is worse than influenza and anything else. But full-blown influenza is, it's debilitating. You can't budge, move, do anything. So you're probably not going to be out anyway. 0344 499 1000. Where are you on the mask gate thing? Is Keir Starmer about to solve the immigration crisis by tinkering with the ECHR? Because if he does, will it make a difference? And will that difference translate to people floating across the channel on boats? Our lines are open. Leave a voice note there as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Cliff says, I would be more concerned that the council actually found out about the wreath. Or how they did, yeah. Some petty-minded resident must have grasped. I mean, did somebody... So you're living in communal, a block of flats, basically. So there's a corridor that takes you to the stairs or the lift, and one of the houses had a wreath on it, and then the council wrote to them and said, you can't put the wreath, it's a communal area, it's a health and safety breach. Spoiler alert, it isn't, so stop it, anyone who's trying to suggest otherwise. But as Cliff identifies, presumably somebody must have reported it and gone, there's somebody at number 36 with a wreath on their door. I think it's rather dangerous, frankly. Almost had a confrontation with a plastic robin. Really? Did anyone seriously have a near miss with a Christmas decoration so great that they felt compelled to phone the council? Wow, what a funny old place we're living in these days. 0344 499 1000. Is Keir Starmer about to solve the immigration crisis? He said that the ECHR must be modernised to help states tackle illegal immigration. He's urging European leaders, along with his Danish counterpart, to update how it's interpreted. Let's have a listen to the Prime Minister. This is speaking just a couple of months ago on the issue of the ECHR. Here he is.
Mr. Speaker, we will not withdraw from the European Convention of Human Rights. We do need to make sure that both the Convention and other instruments are fit for the circumstances we face at the moment, and therefore, of course, we have been, as we made clear, looking at the interpretation of some of those provisions. It would be a profound mistake to pull out of these instruments, because the first thing that would follow is every other country in the world that adheres to these instruments would pull out of all their agreements with this country. That would be catastrophic for dealing with the problem that we're actually dealing with.
So we pull out of it, then all other countries will pull out of all sorts of other deals because we pulled out of it. I don't think I'm misinterpreting him in that respect. Let's speak firstly with Liam Deacon, communication consultant and former head of press with the Brexit Party. What are you making of this, Liam? Is it a step in the right direction? Keir Starmer's sort of at least acknowledging that the ECHR is getting in the way of things.
Yes, in a way. It's really fascinating you play that clip, because if you're going to admit that an institution is fundamentally not working and that is delivering bad results to the United Kingdom, then you sort of have to say, well, then two things either have to happen. Either we change that institution and what it's delivering, or we leave it. But what he's saying is it's fundamentally not delivering for the British people. It's fundamentally delivering bad results. I'm not going to leave it, so we have to reform it. Okay, so he's setting himself up to fail because he can't reform this thing. I tell you what this reminds me of, Ian. It reminds me of when David Cameron marched off to the capitals of Europe in, what was it, 2013-14, saying he was going to reform the EU and we wouldn't need a referendum.
Yes, I remember. I made that analogy about 10 minutes ago, that it's the people that said we can renegotiate Brexit.
And what did he get in? He got sweet F all.
Yeah, absolutely nothing.
From the capitals of Europe. Yeah. And I mean, this is so. What he's going to do at this big summit in the coming day or two is they are going to make a political declaration. Yeah. This is the sum of what they can do. And there's been some, even the Guardian reporting this as sympathetically as they possibly could, said it would carry significant weight and could influence the ECHR if it garners enough signatories. What that tells you is this political declaration has the power to do nothing. Okay, these judges, they have power without accountability. Okay, so this is the ECHR is a declaration, a treaty of the Council of Europe, and the Council of Europe has 20-something odd members. And about 50% of those members have said it's misfunctioning now. And the only way to change it is to get all of those members to agree that they need to change it. It's not to make political declarations that are basically begging the judges to do something which they have consistently displayed over decade after decade after decade they're not interested in doing. They are not interested in bending their judgments to deliver sort of better outcomes for the people of Europe overall, to create deterrence and to do sensible things that will keep us safe and our borders closed. No, they are narrowly focused on delivering good outcomes for individual migrants who bring claims. That's what they've consistently proven to do. Begging them now with a political declaration to completely do the opposite of what they've been doing for 20 years is patently not going to happen. Like, it's not going to happen. And then, so what Keir Starmer's done is then he's ruled out the second step, say, well, we'll leave it. So I think this is a kind of a gift, Ian, because what he's said is he's admitted what so many of us have been saying for so long, that this institution is delivering bad results for the British people. He's going to fail. There's no way that this political declaration is going to yield significant results. And then we're going to have a secondary conversation about how we leave the thing. And he's already said he won't, which is a gift to Nigel Farage, because he's going to be able to say, well, Keir Starmer said it's broken, and I'm the only one proposing to do anything about it meaningfully, which is leave the damn thing.
And of course, many people are getting in touch with us saying, well, you know, even if he tinkered with it, so you stopped chicken nugget scenarios and the like, that doesn't really touch the sides in terms of the wider problem. So it might, you know, let's be generous to Mr. Starmer. So he goes and renegotiates it along with the Danes, and they come up with this great idea. Like, it was written 70, 80 years ago, needs reforming, so they reform it, they take a few paragraphs out, they modify section C, subsection 2, all of that business. And so there's no more chicken nugget, I can't speak German defences anymore, and that box is ticked. Now, that might account for about 100 migrants out of, well, 64,000 that have come across the channel since Keir Starmer's been in number 10. It doesn't fundamentally solve the problem of immigration.
No, it doesn't. I mean, the two articles that he's talking about changing are Article 8, which is the right to a family life. The chicken nuggets one's brilliant. My personal favourite, Ian, my personal favourite distortion of Article 8 is that a group of Swiss pensioners took a case to the ECHR where they said their right to a family life had been disrupted by climate change. And the Swiss government needed to spend more money tackling climate change, or their right to a family life had been disrupted, and they won.
They won.
And they won. And I mean, this is just a demonstration of quite how distorted these things have become. Now, if these Swiss pensioners can win that case, your right to a family life as a recently arrived migrant, you've got all sorts of claims that you could bring.
You've got a myriad possibilities. If that is where the bar is set on the old Swiss granny climate ruse, then frankly, you've got no problem at all. I could represent one of these people in court.
It really is bizarre. I mean, and the second one is Article 3, which is something that the Council of Europe call an absolute right. So this is your right not to face torture or inhumane treatment. Now, uncontroversially, I think we can all agree that nobody should face torture or inhumane agreement. But it's in the detail. It's when you tap in to actually how they interpret this. Okay, and one thing that Shabana Mahmood, this is not me, a right-wing populist, highlighting this. This is Shabana Mahmood has highlighted this. They interpret sort of your right to not be tortured as the size of the cell that you might be kept in as a foreign criminal when you're deported. These are the kind of things we're on about. And actually, it turns out that you cannot just balance Article 3 like they have with Article 8. It's an absolute right, and the Council of Europe need to change it. But anyway, so you're quite right, Ian. We could be doing all this chicanery for months and years to come, and nothing really is going to be changed. And I think actually then you have to ask yourself, why is Keir Starmer doing this? And actually the intentions of it, he's kind of honest about it, that he doesn't believe in any of this, that really it's just a political game he's playing. In the Guardian article, he says that rather than saying there is a principled moral case to changing these dysfunctional laws that are endangering and harming the British people, he actually says that changing this is the best way to, the exact word he says is the best way to fight against the forces of hate and division. The Guardian headline interpreted this as to stop the far right. So he's not doing this because he believes in it. He's not doing this because he thinks it's the right thing to do. No. He's doing this because he wants to keep Nigel Farage out of power. And I think that is an entirely cynical and just awful motivation for any Prime Minister to have. When you're talking actually about one of the most consequential and important things to the British people, okay, like what we saw just a couple of days ago with these two Afghan migrants raping this 14-year-old girl These are really important issues that have real world consequences, and any self-respecting British Prime Minister should want to be tackling them because it's the right thing to do.
You would think so. You would think so. And of course, I don't believe that, if you're a reform voter, you're suddenly going to go, oh, well, I was going to vote for Nigel, but, now Keir's gone all funky with the ECHR. I might go Starmer bound. I don't imagine that happening. Liam, listen, thank you for your time. Great to have you on as ever. Liam Deacon, consultant, former head of press for the Brexit Party. Let's speak with Dr. Mike Galsworthy, who is the chair of the European Movement UK. Good afternoon to you, Mike.
Hey, good afternoon.
Nice to have you with us. Chicken nuggets aside, there are people, even of the left, who concur that, this ECHR bill and ruling and law is long overdue for somebody to have a little look at it. Let's put it that way. Would that be fair?
I think people are looking at it all the time, but I also think that people are misunderstanding that all of this is very much like Brexit all over again. And Keir Starmer needs to be very careful that he doesn't go and do a David Cameron. As you guys were just saying, this notion of cynically going back and saying, we'll have a little fiddle with some European partners, and then suddenly throwing that red meat to the people who are really enraged about this is suddenly going to calm them down and they won't go voting for Nigel Farage. He's in real danger of slipping into that trap. What he needs to do is tackle the whole thing head on and say that we don't have all the right systems in place at the moment, but if we're really concerned about criminals in this country, leaving the ECHR would be exactly like Brexit in that it would have the opposite effect. So with Brexit, remember, the big promise was trade will go up and bounteous and immigration will come down, whereas immigration went shooting up and trade got restricted. Similarly, with leaving the ECHR, if the intention is to get criminals out, leaving the ECHR would actually make it a lot easier for criminals to come in, and they would be more difficult to trace, and that is a massive problem, and the government should be focusing on that and saying, look, there's a balance of trade-offs here. Yes, we'd like to get rid of, there are some circumstances over decades where it's been frustrating. They're not many, you can count them on one hand or two, but if we throw away this framework wholesale, then we go out of the Council of Europe and we go out of all the Europol, Eurojust, exchanging DNA and criminal records and flight records and fingerprints and face recognition stuff that's coming in. We get rid of all of that and we put ourselves in a blind spot. And so those people fleeing justice in other countries are not going to get caught at the borders. And that's a much, much bigger risk than the few frustrations that we have to deal with at the moment, which is a subset of the irregular immigrants coming in. The irregular immigrants isn't the immigration problem, which is much larger. And then it's only a subset of those that try and escape justice through using these articles.
Sorry to interject, Mike. So you concur with Keir Starmer when he said, and you probably heard the clip we played, that, if you pull out of the ECHR, then all these other agreements fall by the wayside as well. I mean, does that... Is
that what he said? Well, if that's what he said, then he's right on that.
Yeah, I mean, but is he right on that? I mean, because many would say, what? I mean, many of these... kind of agreements, facial recognition and fingerprints and stuff, came subsequently to the writing of the ECHR. So they're not dependent on it. Surely they can work autonomously.
Well, you're sounding very much now like a lot of people sounded during the Brexit debate. Remember when it was all a case of, oh yeah, we can leave the EU, but then we'll still get exactly the same rights.
But you can, surely. I mean, who is giving out these rights? Is it someone? Is it some fella sitting there in Brussels going, "Oh, you can have this, but you have to have this"? He's not, the Oracle of Delphi. He's not imparting the word of the Messiah, is he? I mean, it doesn't have to be like that. You can say, okay, we actually want to be part of this agreement with clear safety, security issues about fingerprints and people with a bad rap, that we can identify at the border. You don't have to be signed up to the ECHR to be able to do that. It doesn't physically come with it as a kind of intrinsic bond.
It kind of does, because think about it this way: it's about human rights, right? If I'm, for example, the Spanish government or German government or Danish government, right? am I going to give you sensitive information about my own citizens, their fingerprints and criminal records, if you can't guarantee some basics? So that's the whole thing. But also it's part of the trade and cooperation agreement. It's actually explicitly written in there that the ECHR, it's the human rights in it, are fundamental to our understanding here. And all of this justice cooperation is something that we retain the right to pull if you can't guarantee the basic rights of the ECHR. It's kind of that simple. It's in black and white. And Lord Wolfson,
it sort of sounds like a Joseph Heller-like conundrum, doesn't it? I mean, it doesn't, you know...
I don't know who Joseph Heller is, but...
He wrote Catch-22. But in terms of analysis of that, I mean, I appreciate that that is the reality now.
Yeah.
But we have other laws that supersede things as well. I mean, you couldn't be... If a Spaniard came here and we weren't in the ECHR, we don't have the right to torture them and go, oh, it's fantastic because we're not in the HR, so we can pull Pedro's fingernails out. No one's going to do that.
I would hope not, and a lot of people were saying the same thing during the Brexit debate of kind of like, oh no, of course the EU wouldn't do that, of course they wouldn't do that. But listen, Lord Wolfson wrote the legal analysis for Kemi Badenoch to chew on. And when it came to membership of the Council of Europe or the Justice and Cooperation, he said in both cases, let's hope that they don't do that, but that's all political, so it's got nothing to do with my legal analysis. And then Kemi Badenoch sort of picked up on that and said, well, the legal analysis says it's all fine and doable, and there are other bits that we can worry about later.
Yeah.
But of course, this is fundamental to trust, this is fundamental to structures. I mean, if you're still in it and working out with the others, what can we all agree on, then fine, because then you're playing as a team member. If you go and take the ball away or say, I won't listen to the referee, but I still want to play the same game, that's when the other countries are going to have a problem. And it was like that with Brexit. It'll be like that with leaving the Council of Europe, and it will cause, because this is a scale thing, right? I'm not saying there aren't problems that are niggling, but it's a scale thing. It will cause many more problems than it will fix, and that's the essence of it.
Mike, some people might perhaps cynically say that, you know, the reason it's so intertwined in this sort of labyrinthine world of legalese and interchangeable paragraphs that appear on that particular area of life, but also appear... It's done that way to make it so bloody hard to just leave something, rather than something that is intrinsically legally logical or the only way it can be done. It's being constructed to be convoluted so that people don't leave it. Is that fair?
Not constructed, almost. Not constructed to be convoluted, constructed to be international guarantees. Look at what's happening in the States at the moment with all the ICE raids and people being tortured there. This is not in the American Constitution or way of doing things. You can fall off the cliff really quickly. And the point is, when you've got the international guarantee, because you're signed up to the same contracts, it buffers what your government can turn on a dime and do. Things like the ECHR also guarantee that stuff like digital IDs, they can't take too far because it would breach our human rights.
Okay.
So it does make things difficult and slow moving, but for a reason.
10 seconds.
For all of our safety.
Okay, 10 seconds if you could on this, Mike. Would it be fair then to say if all of that is as immovable, or certainly bloody tricky if you wanted to move it, as you say, then would you be quite suspicious of the Tories and Reform saying we're leaving the ECHR? If they were in power tomorrow, do you think they would renege on that promise?
Oh, I think they would leave the ECHR and then see what happens with the wreckage, just like they did with Brexit. They would go into it blind, happily march off the cliff, and then say, oh, look where we are now. OK, let's try and make the best of it.
All right, Mike, it's been fabulous having you on. Let's speak again soon. That is Dr. Mike Goolsworthy, Chair of the European Movement UK. You can hear where he's coming from. There might be some disagreement. They're his views. What are yours? 0344 499 1000.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of there quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's go to your calls. This is Mike in Wiltshire on that issue of, has Keir Starmer solved it, Mike? What do you think? Afternoon.
I don't think so, Ian. The biggest problem is we need to take away the reasons why people want to come here. And as such, if we left the ECHR, people would still come to this country. They would have to be housed until they had their day in court. So basically, what I think we need to do is to keep them in detention centres so they can't cause havoc in our country. And we also need to work with the EU because, as I think I've mentioned this to you before, they need to close their borders between countries to make it as difficult as possible for people to go, in different parts of the EU and eventually come across to us.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it doesn't take a genius to work out that this is, I'm sure there's a plumbing analogy here. If you get a water leak, that you can stick a big bowl, a big scrolled up load of loo roll into a pipe. But, ultimately the problem will just exist elsewhere. And that's what this sounds like to me. I mean, if you take, and I know that the boat story is a very visual one, Mike, and
yes,
of course the bigger issue with immigration is actually elsewhere. But put it all together, if you stop the pull factor, surely you stop at least the channel migration. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know whether the answer might be to have a ship moored in the middle of the channel that the French can take these people to.
Could be.
So they don't even come into our territorial waters.
Yeah, it may be that. I mean, whatever it is, I mean, there's this new guy that wants to become the president of France. He was over here yesterday lunching with Nigel Farage and our own Alex Phillips as well. And he says, if he becomes the president of France, he will do all he can. He's more on the right, as you can imagine, than Macron. He'll do all that he can. So maybe there is a way. We just haven't had anyone with the political balls to actually implement it. Mike, thank you very much indeed for starting us off. More comment from you. Derek in Derbyshire says we need to both leave the ECHR and withdraw all benefits and send straight back to France, and also stop paying France to stand by and do nothing as they gather on the French beaches. I mean, how many initiatives can Keir Starmer have? He's going to smash the gangs. Didn't happen. One in, one out. Turned out to be about 5,000 in and almost none out. I mean, that's ridiculous. Other issues they've tinkered around with, and now this one will renegotiate the ECHR. It's not going to. Will it stop the boats, Keir Starmer? Will it stop the boats? Yes, you might curtail chicken nugget defences, and that's great. But how many? I mean, we laugh about them, we report them when they happen, and they are so ridiculous and such a horrendous abuse of decent laws that were once decent laws. But ultimately, it's not even the thin end of the wedge. It's non-existent in the grander scale. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome back to the home of Common Sense. We are talking about Keir Starmer. He's only gone and done it as he's solved the immigration problem. Well, he thinks he might be onto something by modernising, not leaving, modernising the ECHR, saying that current interpretations, especially the Article 8, that's the right to family life, hindering deportations. Well, that may be the case, but it's such the thin end of the wedge. It doesn't really touch the sides of the wider issue of illegal immigration in this country. We'll have more on that and more from you as well. Can Keir Starmer solve it? Seriously? Lines are open. Elsewhere, one NHS leader has said that anyone with flu or cold symptoms should wear a mask in public amid an early and nasty wave of flu. He stated that if you're coughing and sneezing but still going to work, make sure you are masked up in public spaces and on transport to protect others. Wasn't it confirmed that masks basically did nothing? Basically. We'll talk to some people on this in just a couple of moments. And dozens of pubs and restaurants are banning Labour MPs from entering their premises in a backlash over higher taxes. Publicans are not happy. The No Labour MPs stickers seem to be going up all over the place. Around about 50 venues have already signed up for this. Is your pub one of them? Are you a drinker in one such place? We'll talk more on that, and we will chat to one landlord who's definitely stickered up in the No Lefties campaign. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Kevin in East Sussex says, I often never understand why people think that the UK is so evil on human rights that the UK is going to be unable to regulate itself without the ECHR controls. Well, that was the point I rather made to our previous guest, who I thought was brilliant, by the way, and sold his own argument quite well, but he simultaneously exposed not just the porous, but the ridiculous nature of some aspects of intertwined law. And you do get the idea, whether you are kind of a Brexiteer or a Remainer. And he said, well, you know, the ECHR, you can't just come out of. If you come out of that, you've got to come out of all these other security arrangements and fingerprinting, shared data on criminality. You've got to come out of all of that, you know, the promise that you're not going to beat the living daylights out of a Spaniard if he turns up on your shores and has a bit of a moody CV in the crime world. Well, I mean, we already have laws again. The idea that we're going to suddenly turn into, you know, some horrendous place in North Korea, getting the knuckle dusters out at Heathrow because you don't like the look of somebody, but we'll be able to do it with impunity because we're not in the ECHR. We can torture people, everybody. I mean, it's just nonsense. But what he was right about, Mike Galsworth, the doctor we spoke to, was that the laws are deliberately written in such a way that if you wanted to even modify them, you run the risk of going on a 10-year journey because it's been written in, I would suggest purposely, in a manner that makes it almost impossible to fiddle with. So you do so at your peril. And there's the problem. It shouldn't be like that, surely. A country should autonomously be able to decide that they want to be part of this, this or this. And a gun should not be held to their head because they have a different idea to another country on how their security is best served. I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think it's a left-wing or a right-wing point. Bit of common sense, isn't it? And let's go back to mask wearing. If you are watching this programme right now, I hope you have your mask on. If not, we will send the boys round by about 6 o'clock to cart you off to the asylum. This is the CEO of NHS Providers, says that mask wearing should return to anyone who's got the symptoms, the cold or flu symptoms, because there's a tidal wave of illness. A nasty flu strain is hitting early in warm, wet school term conditions. Let's have a listen to what he said.
When you were talking about it being like COVID, I think we need to get back into the habit that if you are coughing and sneezing, but you're not unwell enough to not go to work, then you must wear a mask when you're in public spaces, including on public transport, to stop the chances of you giving your virus to somebody else.
Daniel Elkelis, who's the CEO of NHS Providers. Doesn't that remind you a little bit of what happened 5.5, can you believe it, 5.5 years ago? Here's the then Prime Minister, a fella called Boris.
We will also extend the requirement to wear a face covering to other indoor settings where you're likely to come into contact with people you do not normally meet, such as museums, galleries, cinemas, and places of worship. We now recommend face coverings are worn in these settings, and this will become enforceable in law from the 8th of August.
That's what he said, and we know what happened. Let's speak firstly with Robert Dingwall, Emeritus Professor of Sociology, Nottingham Trent University. Robert, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Slightly disappointed you're not masked up for this interview, but, you know, I'm not either, and we wouldn't understand each other if we were, I guess. We remember it well. It was a horrible period, no matter where people stood on masks. Nobody liked wearing these things. But they could be back. I mean, what's your overall take on what we've heard from the CEO of NHS providers?
Well, what I'm very puzzled about is that the CEO doesn't seem to be appreciating the broad consensus of medical evidence on this, which is that any benefit from masks in interfering with community transmission is minimal to non-existent, particularly as he's advocating them in relation to people already coughing and sneezing, where coughing and sneezing will do more to compromise the integrity of the mask than wearing a dry mask, which may or may not have any benefit in preventing you from getting infected. But certainly it's the least effective phase of mask wearing is to think that you should be wearing one if you're going out on the street coughing and spluttering.
Yeah, and of course there is an overarching argument.
You should really be staying at home.
Well, I was about to say there's an overarching argument, isn't there? If you're really coughing and spluttering and sneezing that much, you know, don't go out. I don't think most people would want to. But it was an interesting... I mean, I'm tempted to use the word experiment in some ways. I don't want to get too conspiratorial about it, but, you know, and I know some people do. But it does, when you look back at it, and maybe a panicked government thought, look, you know, even if it does 0.5% safety and avoids somebody contaminating somebody else. And, you know, I'm no virologist, but I kind of sort of worked out I don't think these little virus characters sort of stop when they see a bit of material. You know, these minutiae things that travel around and infect people, which can, you know, go through, you know, less than the eye of a needle and the like. I can't imagine this floppy mask, when there was no regulation as to what kind of mask you had to wear. Could have been a West Ham scarf. You know, nobody seemed to care as long as you were somehow wearing a mask. It did feel almost like, you know, how far can we push the people? As a sociologist, I wonder, you know, that can't have been lost on you, that analogy.
Well, indeed. And I think if one was being entirely fair to the public health authorities, at the beginning of COVID, nobody really knew too much about it. We were generalising from the evidence of other respiratory viruses, particularly influenza, which we've been studying for more than 100 years, since the great pandemic of 1918. The difference this time is that, you know, we are dealing with an influenza outbreak, and we actually have the evidence that directly relates to that. You know, it's not a bit of guesswork from this worked for other respiratory viruses, let's try it for COVID. It is saying we have 100 years of research on influenza and influenza transmission. We still don't have all the answers, but one of the things that we are very clear about is that with high quality evidence, that masks don't achieve very much, if anything.
Yeah. And that, I think, is, you know, when you, even those that were pro-mask wearing clinicians on a quiet day will usually tell you exactly the same thing, which is rather interesting. Robert, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Robert Dingwall, he's Professor of Sociology, Nottingham Trent University. James Melville is the Professor of Common Sense, regular with us on the programme. Afternoon to you, James. Again, not wearing a mask, sporting, you know, that wonderful sort of beard you have, that lovely stubble, that's enough protection for anyone. I share a little bit of that with you, so we know what we're talking about. Do we need a piece of material to stop the spread of the flu, James? Good afternoon.
Yeah, well, it's a big concern. I remember the common sense approach pre-COVID. You know, seasonal flu, viruses in the winter, a bit of common sense. If you're not feeling well and you might spread it onto other people, well, take yourself off to your room, get some Lucozade, get some pills, and have a few days to recover. And now, since COVID, we've got sort of the auspice of health and safety from all angles, in particular from government, where they think they know best. And yet, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the masks simply don't work in terms of viruses. And sometimes it can be counterproductive. They can let off toxins, it can cause breathing difficulties, throat infections, and so on. There's also the pollution aspect. I was reading that something like 120 billion masks waste per week during the COVID era.
Wow.
And over 3 billion masks are floating around our oceans. No one's really talking about that. They didn't mention that at COP recently, did they?
Good point.
The other aspect is the outlier in all of this, Sweden. Sweden didn't lock down. They didn't have mask mandates. They kept the schools open. And guess what? In the round, who's got the lowest excess deaths over that period?
Yeah.
Sweden. They held their nerve. They used common sense. They told the public to do what we used to always do. If you're not feeling well, have a few days by yourself. You know, look after yourself. Have a support network if it gets really bad. But what we shouldn't be doing is either locking down society or enforcing or coercing individuals to wearing masks. If people want to wear a mask, that is up to them. It's about freedom of choice. But we are developing this mentality that when we have seasonal bugs, you know, big brother governments and the NHS and local authorities are telling us that we need to stay safe, protect the NHS, wear a mask. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that masks actually don't work on this. And as for protect the NHS, well, actually what they should be doing is protecting the patients with better practices, better managerial processes, better equipment, spend in the right areas. So I will take this with a pinch of salt, and I suspect this time round more people will as well, because I think a lot of people have learned the lessons from the COVID era.
Well, you'd think so, but we also know among us, James, and you're absolutely spot on, by the way. Look, you know, we live in a free society. If somebody wants to wear a mask, whether it's one of those face masks or the old Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan ones, I don't really care. It's up to the individual. You know, we're a broad church of people. Folk can do whatever they like, but there will be some, on a more serious point, that actually are quite scared by this kind of talk. You know, when you hear NHS people, they've got an impressive title, and they come out and say, look, you know, we've got a terrible tidal wave of flu, which, you know, for as long as I've been alive, you know, it's winter. These things happen, and, you know, if you're feeling that groggy, you usually don't go to work if it's that bad. You're right, you know, have a cup of tea or a Lucozade and, you know, a couple of paracetamols, lay down, sleep it off, and you'll be as right as rain in 48 hours. That's always been the rule of thumb. It's kind of worked almost forever.
Yes, exactly. And there's so much scaremongering, you know, and this, you know, from government, from aspects of the media, you know, things like super flu or Arctic blast, if you're talking about, you know, cold snaps coming in. It's basically winter. You know, winter in terms of low temperatures, maybe a bit of snow, bit of rain, bit of wind. And in the case of this, flu is no longer flu anymore. It's been rebranded as something much more scary. And most people will see through it now. Actually, in COVID, most people didn't in terms of some of the measures. Yeah. But that was because of endless drumbeat and propaganda coming from government and a lot of aspects of media, which was amplifying things in a way that the response was just illogical and also incredibly counterproductive. And I am concerned about this, that there will be some people who will think this is COVID Mark II, or will read things and think the worst without actually maybe educating themselves about the detail of this, what is required. But it comes back to common sense again. Yes, there's individual choice, but the common sense is, you know, just mind your own business for a few days, recover, do the right things for that. But we should not be getting government and the NHS to effectively try and coerce us, with a lot of media backing them at the moment, into something that it just isn't proven that is particularly beneficial to curb the flow of viruses. I mean, the WHO, right at the start of COVID, were actually saying that we shouldn't be wearing masks, and then they pivoted on that. Everyone pivoted on that. And I'm concerned long term that this becomes part of a winter cycle, that masks become the natural response of our authorities. And I think that is a bit of a slippery slope. And also on an individual level, there's other aspects to this. I mean, do our children really want to see society every winter with the majority of people wearing face masks? Sure. There's also repercussions with that in sort of educational outlets, where teachers are struggling to communicate properly if they're wearing a mask. It looks dystopian. The art of tactile behaviour and socialising and just the normalities of life, which is full face-to-face. We do not want that taken out of society in endless winter cycles of propaganda about what always happens in winter And that is the cycle of viruses. And what should also happen in a normal winter cycle is the normal response to this. It's up to the individual to take some sort of empowerment of their own personal responsibility based on common sense, to take themselves off, recover in their own time, but not enforce, as authorities are doing, or at least coerce, this mask approach that ultimately, like a lot of the responses in COVID, cause more collateral damages than the solutions that the authorities are trying to make us believe.
Yeah, absolutely bang on, 100%. Listen, James, thank you as ever. James Melville. The objections to the mask were multifarious. The kind of the anonymity, sort of zombie-like collective optics of the mask were enough for me to say we shouldn't be wearing masks. These faceless creatures mooching around under instruction from their government, going into a shop, catching a train, trying to get to work, walking the dog, all these things with a mask on your face. There was something just, I mean, we use the word dystopian sometimes incorrectly, but it had all of the hallmarks of a bit of that. And it kind of chimes in with, when the government overreach thing, the world of rules and regulations that you don't need. And, people telling you, oh, there's a flu, and this character from the NHS going, yeah, if you've got lots of sneezes and coughs, lob a mask on, mate. It's like, here's another idea. Don't lob a mask on. Look after yourself. Be sensible. Don't splutter and cough over somebody's face on a train. And preferably, if you're that bad, don't go out. I mean, that's been the case forever up until this COVID thing came along. So let's just sort of revert to common sense. The overreach of the council that we talked about in the first hour, telling people they can't put a Christmas wreath on their door if their door is in a communal space because it might be a health and safety hazard. Some bozo has enough time on their hands. I was reading this week. Did you see this one, Finn? If you sell more than 30 items on Vinted, more than 30 items, you'll get a message saying we need your national insurance number, because they're going to hand that over to the authorities, because HMRC might think you're doing a bit of business and earn a few quid on the sides. Good if you are. Get stuffed. That's your right to do that, isn't it? You're flogging your old pants on Vinted. Who cares? What the tax man wants to know? It's that overreach, the incursions into everybody's life, the touching everything you do. There has to be a rule, there has to be a regulation, and it's all backed up by a myriad of laws and regulations and paragraphs enshrined in law somewhere, and if it's not enshrined, somebody's writing it so far. I mean, the miserable list goes on, and this mask story is almost Premier League territory in that respect. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of there quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Leslie says, Ian, I'm really tired of hearing from different scientists and conflicting facts. It's common sense that masks will at least minimise the germs from spreading further, affecting lots of people. Sounds like the media are trying to encourage people not to wear them. If anybody wants to wear them in crowded places, then let them do it without being ridiculed for it. Of course, I would agree. And James Melville just said the same thing. If somebody wants to wear a mask, you can wear a mask. The idea that you are somehow a sort of plague-spreading buffoon if you don't wear a mask is also nonsense. So Leslie is quite correct. Everybody should have their choice. And if somebody wants to wear a mask, and you see people still, even prior to this current story, from COVID till this day, there are still the odd person you see on a train who loves a mask. Up to them, I guess. Matt's in Cheshire, with or without a mask. Matt, good afternoon to you.
Very good afternoon, Ian. Before I start, can I read you a short poem that I read on Talk during the pandemic?
Yes, please.
It's lockdown addiction, your media-made affliction. Without all contradiction, you accept without friction. The kingdom of fear, accept all that you hear. The facts, the stats, and the juice of bats.
I like that.
I read it on the show during what I think it was.
I mean, this is I mean, they've just given out one of the literary prizes, haven't they? So you're a bit late for this year's entry, Matt. But
but it's on my computer somewhere. That's the only thing I can remember out of what I wrote, because I was. Out of all the intrusions and impositions proposed by Labour currently came as a result of the social experiment that was COVID. And COVID was meant to test the public's will and see how much the state can push the boundaries for future use. So to Labour, the mask is a symbol of compelled control. And Labour benefited from the economy tanking during COVID due to the mass splurge by the Conservatives. That's why they egged them on to spend more and lock down more.
Yeah, maybe it was that. Although I have to say, Matt, every time I talk to somebody who was in government at that time, working in Downing Street in whatever capacity, official or political or otherwise, and I put that to them, this was almost like an experiment. They have to stop laughing after about 20 seconds, and they say, mate, this was the most disorganised, chaotic. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. The idea that it was sort of arranged somehow is for the birds. It felt like it might have looked like it, but these people couldn't organise a what's-it in a brewery.
Our government couldn't. That doesn't mean China couldn't organise how it affected the rest of the world, does it?
Well, that's true. I mean, it would be quite a big experiment to carry out, but yes, I mean, I suppose it's possible.
I don't mean the actual disease itself. I
know what you're saying. So it was of interest to the likes of China to see how the world reacted to something and how easy it would be to nudge people into certain behavioural conditions.
Yeah, exactly. And Labour obviously would jump at that chance.
Yeah, because they love the idea that the government knows best is intrinsic to being a kind of Labour supporter, I guess, particularly this flavour of Labour government. Good call, Matt. Thank you very much indeed for that. Stuart says, afternoon, Ian. Don't these politicians, teachers, police, NHS staff work for us, the British taxpayer? And just who the hell do they think they are? And will they go out for dinner and partying like last time while we go around like a bunch of chumps in our masks, they say. That's another one, by the way. If you speak to anybody who works at Downing Street, say to them at that time, so what about the parties then? They go, there was no parties. I didn't get invited to it. But there's so many people work in Downing Street, by the way. I think there were a couple of drinks dues, and there was a bit of an ease up one night when somebody said, bring a bottle. But I slightly defend Downing Street in that respect. It was terrible, by the way. There's no defence of that going on. It wasn't because, the people in... Do you remember those conspiracies? The reason why they had a party is because the people in Downing Street knew there was nothing wrong. Like the work experience kid was privy to some sort of for your eyes only top secret memo. I doubt it. He was the one going to get the booze from the offie. It was just it was a mess, wasn't it? But they also didn't have parties on a daily basis. There was a couple of drinks leaving dues, which happened almost in any workplace. But of course, when you transpose the story to the centre of power, it's always going to look bad. Doesn't defend anyone who had the party, by the way, because lots of people, and all of those people also had to meet the same rules and regulations outside Downing Street. So when people go, well, I couldn't see my dying relative and you were having a party, well, they also couldn't see their dying relative, and most of them didn't have a party, and that just happens to be the fact of the matter. But it's one of those stories you can't really... So the minute you try to go there, like I am now, people go, oh, you're defending them having parties. No, I don't think Boris Johnson got fined, didn't he, for attending his own, and here's the key word, surprise birthday party. His surprise birthday party. I mean, that really does take criminality to a new level. A party you didn't know you were going to have, but then when you were there, by definition of existing, you got fined for it. Matthew is in Newport. Matthew, what have you got for us?
Oh dear, defending Boris, that's a good start. Anyway, no,
outrageous.
Yes, no one should. Right, I just want to make the point, there's a couple of things actually, and I like science and I like actual facts and I don't like echo chambers. So first things first, flu isn't just a 24 hours and, have a bit of Lucasade and take a paracetamol and you're going to be right as rain. It's influenza. It will take the average healthy person and put them in bed and out of action for a week.
Yeah.
I mean, so you get a loss of...
And that's assuming you have influenza as distinct from a bad cold.
Yeah, a cold, that's exactly the right thing. You get your paracetamol and your whatever and your Lemsip. Other medications are available. But there is evidence that when SARS was in Japan and they introduced mask wearing and other things, the influenza virus was suppressed. It also leads to a sort of a proactive doing other hygiene measures. You're more aware that people are around you. You don't go out and sneeze into someone's face. But it's not only that as well. It's that a lot of people don't realise if you get something like influenza, that can lead you to actually acquire an autoimmune disease.
Right.
And it's not thought about. I actually suffer from a disease which is basically fusing my spine together. It's called ankylosing spondylitis, and it turns your spine into a bamboo stick and other joints and other illnesses. Oh. And there's evidence that was caused when I was 18 with a bout of flu that took me out at Christmas. I didn't get out of bed for Christmas. So there's another point. And the other thing I want to make is people keep quoting Sweden. Now, they didn't lock the schools down because the government couldn't. It's a different way of doing things. It was a local thing. They did have restrictions on movement, and they didn't have less people die. Per million people, more people died in Sweden than in Norway. Okay?
Yes, in the Scandinavian countries, they did worse than their counterparts. That's true.
Yeah, so this isn't a panacea of less.
No, Sweden is a slightly. You're right about that. It's a slight, and also Swedish behaviour with their own authorities is very different as well, which is another fact. It's hard to kind of tangibly pin that one down, but they have a very different relationship with government and health. Their health department is run in a different way, very autonomous from government like ours is, etc. So. Yeah, you're right. It's not completely comparable.
Ian, can I make one more point?
Yeah.
What concerns me is this constant negativity towards a threat of a virus, and this idea that something, the next time there'll be no lockdowns, next time I'm going to ignore the government. What the hell happens when something really, really bad comes in and people just say, well, last time I did this, last time I did that? We've got to be wise to what's happening.
Yeah, and yes, you're absolutely right. I often think about that very point on a sensible day, if literally the plague returned, where standing half a foot from somebody will give them the plague. If that is the case, I think what happened with this is that, and lots of people who said, I'm not adhering to any of these kind of rules and regulations, they didn't do that because they knew something about COVID or anything. They just didn't want to adhere to it. But there was a point in the story, Matthew, where we became aware of who is likely, with COVID this is, who is likely to get affected, which groups are most vulnerable, etc. And we did know that certainly within a year.
I don't disagree with that.
On that point, Matthew, great to have you on, Matthew in Newport, and that's the point, isn't it? Once we realise actually this wasn't killing people and it's not, just because somebody is vulnerable and old doesn't mean, well, that's okay then, they can get it. You have to be sensible about it, and I think the Swedes, day to day, were mostly sensible about it. The density of the country, the populace of certain towns, all of those little factors, I think, were also at play in the story when we compare Sweden. But he's quite right. It's not actually, it's a bit of a go-to comparison, but on closer analysis, it's not actually the best. In fact, somebody did tell me there's another country that you could go to for a better example. I'm sure you can tell me. 0344 499 1000. Masks, Starmer, immigration and Christmas decorations on your front door. The list goes on. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Brad says, if someone is constantly coughing and sneezing at work all day, I don't want them there at all. Could you imagine the state of their face after sneezing into a mask all day? Yeah, it does happen. My friend Snotbag McDougall is kind of in that category, I think. This one from Kevin, East Sussex. I often never understand why people think that the UK... Oh, I did read this up. Worth reading again. Is so evil on human rights. unable to regulate itself without ECHR controls. This is back to Starmer renegotiating, along with the Danes, wants to renegotiate, modernise the ECHR because it's not fit for purpose in its current form and is being used for iffy defences around issues pertaining to immigration. 0344 499 1000. Let's move to this story. Labour MPs are being barred from dozens of pubs and restaurants in a bit of a backlash over high taxation. I like the way this one's panning out. No Labour MP stickers are being put up by furious business owners, rising business rates. Do you remember this particular clip we're about to play? This was a few years back, 2021, I think. He wasn't even Prime Minister. Keir Starmer literally being booted out of a pub. Here it is.
Is not allowed in my pub. No law. I'm not going to physically hurt him. That man. That's assault. I am not bothering you. I am not bothering him. That man is not allowed in my pub. Get out of my pub. Go on. Calm yourself down. Get out of my pub. Calm down. Sorry. Thank you.
The funniest thing about that, he tries to shake his hand, doesn't he, at the end? He puts his hand as he tried to shake it. And he's got a face mask on as well. That's the landlord. And I think the other guy was the security that was with Keir Starmer at the time. He didn't want the Labour leader, as he was then, in his pub. But now there are different reasons why Labour MPs might be barred. Let's get a word from Andy Lennox, who runs the Old Thatch pub in Dorset, also a spokesman for the No Labour MPs in Pubs campaign. I'm sure you're familiar with that bit of footage, Andy. It's always worth a revisit, though.
It's always quite funny to look at, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. It's the handshake at the after all of that. The guy's absolutely mad, apoplectic.
I really don't want you here, but can I shake your hand?
Can I just say yes? You're right. We're going. Here's my hand. No, I don't think so, mate. Tell us a bit more about this. It's fun. It's always fun to lampoon and satirise politicians, particularly the government of the day. But there's a very serious underpinning to what this campaign is all about.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing. This is the government of the day. This is not just against, it's not like a Labour thing. This is the government that we are so angry with. We've tried every other avenue. The trade bodies have done one of the best campaigns they've done in years. And it resulted in just more taxation. We're in a situation now where if we don't go further and do more, hospitality as we know it is not going to exist. Ultimately the first budget took probably 350,000 from my business. The second budget, where they said that they wouldn't do any more taxation, has now resulted in higher rates and more taxation. And there isn't anything left to cut.
And this is, one would assume you're talking about national insurance in the first budget. Would that be the big area that got collared, or were there other elements?
There's so many different areas. I mean, ultimately, in this one, you've got the rates and you've got the NI. There's also an alcohol duty, which they put in without really speaking about. Yeah. The last budget was, again, more the NICs, but also more on wages as well. And, there's got to be something broken with our taxation system where I've got, hospitality professionals who have worked for me for 5, 6, 7 years who I want to give a pay rise to, but I can't because I have to give a 12% pay rise to an 18-year-old who's never worked. Hospitality is the engine of growth for the whole of the UK, and we're at the last kind of saloon, really. There's nothing left to cut.
And
the more taxation that comes.
I was talking to my local publican, landlord who owns an establishment, I'm sure fairly similar to your wonderful place there in Dorset, Andy, but he was making the point, if you literally had to pass on the cost to your customer, and of course there's a point when you can't do that, because he said my cheeseburger would cost about 35 quid. He said it'd be ridiculous. You just can't do that, so you're literally left in a cul-de-sac.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, and ultimately that was on the last budget.
Yes, that's without this one.
There's got to be something wrong with the taxation system when the government makes more money in a point than we do. I mean, we take on average 14p.
Yeah.
In a point. So if that point's £5.50, where all of that other money is going somewhere else.
Yes.
And I think you're in a situation now where we've got to find a new way through. Nobody likes doing any banning, and definitely, hospitality has always been one of those places where you don't like to get involved in the politics of everything. But we've got to do something. And you know what? The response has been fantastic so far.
That's good. I'm about to ask, Andy, is your local MP somebody who ever frequents your pub?
So the Ground Zero event basically was in Southbourne, at a place called Larder House, and a guy called James Fowler, and he started putting the stickers up. And his local MP is actually a really great guy. He's a good guy. He's engaged with us over the years. There's nothing wrong with him at all. The problem is the party that he represents have gone too far. There was a quite robust conversation between both parties, and at the time it's not the happiest of moments. But what we said to him, we said, look, you've got to direct your anger and frustration at us, at the government, because they're the ones that are doing this, not us. We're just trying to survive.
If Rachel Reeves was sitting here right now, Andy, what would you be asked? What are publicans and those that work in hospitality in this area, what would they want to happen?
Cut through all the noise and just cut VAT.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate. All we want is parity with Europe. The average VAT rate across Europe and Ireland is 13%. We're at 20%. All we're asking for is to be the same. Ireland are going to cut it to 9%, and we're still 20%. The VAT cut solves all issues. We've said it to them time and time again before. We generate 60 billion in taxes. We want a £3 billion tax cut.
Yeah.
The Liberal Democrats have decided that they're going to cut VAT. The Conservatives have decided that they are going to abolish rates. Labour have just added taxation. What we're saying, and that is the simple ask, and it has always been the ask, is there's a lot of noise around it. And sometimes we get very, very frustrated with people because they go, with rates and this and that. And that's like, the VAT cut solves all of these issues. It drives growth. It brings down inflation. It brings down interest rates. It pushes up employment. And all we would then be doing is just making a profit. Yeah. That's all we're asking to do. Just make a profit. Not make loads of money. Just make a profit. Just a profit. You don't want to be running at a loss. And we're also not saying that we don't want to pay tax. We pay 60 billion in taxation.
Yeah.
Every single annum.
It's not an insignificant amount of number. I hope they're listening, Andy. I genuinely do. As you say, this is sort of last chance saloon on trying to get that point across. But nice to speak with you, Andy. Good luck with it all. We'll speak again, I'm sure. Andy Lennox, he is the landlord of the Old Thatch pub in Dorset and spokesman for the No Labour MPs in Pubs campaign. Is that likely to work? They're right up against it, as are so many other businesses. It doesn't help when you have... I didn't want to say an anti-business government, but you are forced into that view. No one in that government's ever run it. You've got literally no understanding of it at all. They have a sort of very clinical, professional politician approach to these things. And as Labour politicians, that point is particularly pronounced. They never run anything. They sort of have a belief that if you run stuff, you're worth money, you can withstand it, you've got the broadest shoulders. This is all this cobblers. All the stereotypes. It's a party that, would send you to jail normally for stereotyping, apart from when it comes to people who run stuff, people who run businesses. We can stereotype them, ordinary, decent, law-abiding people that might not, we can stereotype them. That's fine. It is extraordinary. It's confusion, and they are shooting themselves in the foot, this government, every day of the week on things just like this. Gaynor is in Leicestershire. Back to Keir Starmer, but for a different reason. Starmer and the ECHR, what are you making of it, Gaynor? Is he about to solve the problem?
We tend to forget that this is a muppet who's running our country, who created the ECHR. So why is he going to change? He knows he can't change it. He's just playing for time, and like I said before, just to sell us out. And the other thing about Brexit that really knocks me, I'm an original Brexiteer, and I'll stand for the right wing as far as I have to. I almost wish I could go to Europe. I wish there's a reverse Brexit so I could leave this country without all the red tape.
There's an irony.
Yeah.
So you actually voted to stop yourself from being able to leave the country, some might say.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. And now
But I take the point. You don't regret the way you voted. It's just an interesting manifestation of where you're at now, where we've ended up with a government whose heart isn't in the whole Brexit thing. Their heart isn't in the average working person. Their heart isn't in, do we pay too much tax? Their heart isn't in trying to reduce the cost of living crisis. They just don't really get it, Gaynor.
No, their heart is about selling us out to the EU. They're going to bankrupt the country, and then the EU will bail us out and own us as one of the other poor countries of the EU. That's what Storm is out for.
There
Have
it
a
is.
good day.
Gaynor, thank you. Love it. Short and sweet. Polly says, I'm backing this campaign all the way. Good on you. The government is clueless. That's referenced the ban Labour MPs from pubs. This one from Dave. Leaving the ECHR in itself will not stop the boats, but it will remove the ability of politicians without the will to hide behind it and not do anything about the crisis. It would also remove the tools currently used by left human rights and asylum lawyers to assist those, including criminals and terrorists, to avoid deportation. Add to that a replacement of our current HR laws with ones based on the rights of the British citizen. Leaving the ECHR would eventually stop the boats. The overarching need, however, is to replace this government with one that has the UK and its citizens as its main focus in what it does. The smart money at the moment says reform, of course, will be the people to replace it. How much of it can they literally reform? And what time frame would you give them? I mean, I think the biggest problem, assuming there was an election tomorrow and they won it, the biggest trouble they have, their to-do list is pretty extensive. And each one of those things on the list is fairly complex. I know on paper it sounds simple, we'll just get out the ECHR. But all the other stuff, as we established earlier, that goes with that, that could take its time. Deportations could take, some suggest, I heard somebody say 2.5 decades the other day, 25 years in order to implement. So you have all of those things. How long would you give a new government to sort things out? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's just gone 10 to 3. Before we carry on, we're going to talk to Mike in Durham in just a second. It's day 4 of The Voice of Doom. It's the mystery voice, but it's political. You're looking for a politician, past, present, dead, alive, left or right, who knows, somewhere in the middle, who knows. Very simply, identify who is this.
Instead of searching for work.
It's obviously old. I don't think that's much of a clue. You can just hear that it is. Have a listen again.
Instead of searching for work.
The only way to get in touch, 87222, 87222, if you think you know who this is.
Instead of searching for work.
And if we get a correct answer, we shall tell you after the news at 3. Let's go to Mike in Durham. What have you got for us, Mike, on pubs?
Hello, Ian. Yes, regarding pubs, something reminded me of a certain Charles R., the King, in 1675, in the 27th year of his reign. And basically, he decided that all the coffee houses at the time, kept within this kingdom, blah-de-blah, all the usual rubbish from then, the great resort of the idle and disaffected persons to them have produced very evil and dangerous effects, as well as for that many tradesmen and others do therein misspend much of their time, which might and probably would otherwise be employed in and about their lawful callings. But for that in such houses, divers false, malicious and scandalous reports are devised and spread abroad to the defamation of His Majesty's government and to the disturbance of the peace and quiet of the realm, etc. So if you get my drift, I think the Labour government or Labour government is trying to shut down the pubs.
It's just full of lazy old gits, right?
Well, it's full of lazy old gits discussing how badly the place is being run and possibly making plans to try.
So
and
you don't want meeting places in that respect. I mean, what do the Labour government? I mean, we could have fun with this as you did there, Mike, and sort of speculate that maybe they just want to close them down so we can't talk about them. But no government in their own thinking. I'm not suggesting that we can't see it, but they would say, well, why would we want to crash an economy? Of course we don't. That would be stupid. But they've got a very strange way of going about it.
I think this is rather controversial. I think it's of great consolation to Steer Calmer and the whole of his cabinet that we think they are stupid. He's the one who, when questioned, would he rather be in Westminster or Davos? After a short pause, he said he'd rather be in Davos. Davos is the home of the World Economic Forum, and their master plan is to destroy Western civilizations and have a rather homogenous mix of all sorts of races.
Why do they want to destroy Western civilization? I mean, the WEF is just a sum of its parts, which is us.
All I will say is take a look at some of the plans that they have laid out and some of the writings of some of their members.
Yeah, but they don't hold any sway. I mean, they don't have any influence individually. They only have the influence of all the people that might subscribe to what they think. I mean, we don't...
Yeah,
whether Starmer thinks they've got a good idea.
Yeah, but they've actually... Klaus Schwab, who set this thing up, has actually...
No, he set it up because he gets £5 million a year from every company that's a member of it. I mean, I wish I was Klaus Schwab. I'd have set it up, wouldn't you?
He stood down from it, but he's actually admitted that he's penetrated the cabinets of all Western governments.
Which is the whole point of a big lobby group. Yeah, but that's the point, isn't it? That's the point of a lobby group.
Well, yes, but this is a very powerful lobby group.
Oh, agreed. I hate lobby groups, by the way. I'm not defending any of this. I'm just suggesting I don't think there's a conspiracy in it, and I don't know how much of what they say in their meetings and goes online actually gets put onto... If you took the WEF out of it, we'd still have digital ID, put it that way.
Possibly, but when you look at the mess that was made of New Zealand by Jacinda Ardern, the mess that was made of Canada by Justin Trudeau. And some of the other global young leaders, and don't forget that Mr. Blair, Tony Blair, I gather is also a graduate of that ilk.
Well, can we, I mean, that's another sort of slightly iffy thing, global, as if they went to some kind of academy and were trained by Klaus. They just gave a speech there once, they're not, they're global young leader, they're not sort of a member of something.
Well, yes, but they've gone to this academy and been...
But they didn't go to an academy. They didn't go to an academy, they went to a meeting for half an hour. and gave a
I think they've
speech.
been there for rather longer. And
Yeah, but it creates the idea that there's this sort of global, Klaus is global, and they sit there for 2 years. They go through boot camp to learn how to be a WEF leader, and none of that actually happened. They gave a speech there because they were new leaders. So you invite new people. You could go tomorrow if you want, Mike.
No, I wouldn't, because I don't agree with them. But I appreciate your scepticism, but I just want people to look. Those who would forget history are doomed to suffer from...
I don't think the WEF have the credibility to make the history books. But I hear what you're saying, and Mike, thank you very much indeed for that. We didn't even get to the thing of you'll own nothing and be happy, which is also something else the WEF didn't say, but that's another story. Marcus in Liverpool. And by the way, I hate the WEF, but for different reasons. Marcus, what do you think?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, regarding masks and the NHS and Keir Starmer. Basically, this is a guy, and I think a lot of people forget, didn't want to come out of lockdown. So if there's a great chance that Labour can put the whole of UK back into lockdown, he'll jump on it, because they were his easiest moments within the government. He could just sit back and take, the votes from Conservative at the time because they were making such a mess.
Yeah,
but he did state, that he wouldn't have put us back out of it, quite solidly, when Conservatives said, let's go back to work.
I mean, you're right. Starmer was absolutely waving the flag for longer and more robust lockdowns. I don't know what he was basing it on, Marcus, other than I don't know, being in opposition to the Tories? What was his thinking?
I think it was because he knew Conservatives couldn't deal with anything else but the lockdown and COVID, and it would destroy Conservatives at the time. And it was an easy ride for him then to get into government because everybody hated what Boris had done.
Yeah, it was probably that. I mean, he just capitalised on the opposite to what Boris was doing. And, of course, in 2024, when it eventually came to the election, people were pulling their hair out with frustration at the Conservatives. The Labour Party had they always talk about the Labour Party had a great campaign. Well, you didn't need a great campaign. They could have just turned up and, it was an open goal for them. Marcus, I've got to move, but thank you very much indeed for that. Quick reminder of the voice of doom.
Instead of searching for work.
87222 if you think you know who that is. Right now, let's get the news headlines. It's 3 o'clock.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome to the home of common sense. So much to get through. We will continue to take your calls on whether Keir Starmer leaving the ECHR, will leaving the ECHR solve immigration? Will modernising it do anything like it? This is Keir Starmer. He's urging for a modernisation. Will it make a difference? Will it address the issue? Details and comments on that. Can Starmer essentially finally solve the problem over the boats? More on that story from you. Also, elsewhere, the NHS leader that has said that anyone with flu or cold symptoms should wear a mask in public. If you're sneezing and coughing all over the place and still going to work, mask up, he says. Well, if you've got that going on, don't go to flipping work, you dirty, snotty tyke. Don't do that, because that's a very bad thing indeed. In fact, you probably don't want to either. But if the masks came back, what is your thoughts on them? Sorry to bring the M word into this. It's not a nice thought, I know. Or do you still wear one? Some people do, don't you know? And Keir Starmer has declared his moral mission to turn the tide on the lost decade of young kids left as collateral damage as today the government launches its 10-year youth plan, pledging £500 million to revive youth services. Well, I know what he's saying. Is it likely to work? We've had a lost decade for young kids. There's loads of things Starmer could do. I don't want government interference, but I think there's lots of things that can make our life a little bit more manageable in so many ways, particularly those who need assistance. I'm not sure this government are the people to put it into action. Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. So let's look at this. Donald Trump says Sadiq Khan was elected thanks to migrant inflows, branding him a horrible mayor who's made London a different place. He called him a disaster with the wrong ideology. So what do Americans think of us Brits and, quite frankly, the rest of Europe when the president says things like this? Of course, it's not the first time he's gone overboard in this respect. Greg Swenson is the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Greg, always good to talk. How are you, sir?
Great to see you, Ian.
And nice to have you on again. I mean, he does seem to have a thing for Sadiq Khan, doesn't he? And I mean, there is an argument. The only thing that annoys me is when he says it, is that he's also acknowledging his existence. So I kind of squirm a bit. I think, you know, there might be a little bit of it that makes Khan go, hey, this is great. I've got the president of the... No president of the United States has ever referenced the mayor of anywhere in this country. And here is Sadiq Khan, some say living rent-free in Donald Trump's head.
Yeah, and I think that the president has a couple of characters like that. I think before the big, kiss and make up love fest in the White House, he had the same kind of spat going with Mamdani in New York, the incoming mayor. So, you know, he punches back. That's the interesting thing and unusual thing about this president. And that's one of the reasons he was elected 2 or 3 times. So, he punches back. He's not going to take any garbage. And that whole scene in 2018 when he came to London and Sadiq, had the balloon, or he at least permitted the balloon to go up. And, the president, as I said, he takes things personally, but he also punches back. So he's not afraid to do that.
I thought that balloon thing was, I thought it was a disaster. I thought it was, for want of a better phrase, I thought it was just impolite, to be honest, Greg.
Yeah,
it was just a very curious thing for a mayor to say, yeah, it's a great idea.
And by the way, he's right about Sadiq Khan, so it's
well, yes,
like
I mean, when he talks about him being... Yeah, he's a disaster. I don't know why how anybody could possibly form an argument against that analysis, frankly.
Yeah, that's right. And I think normally in polite society or in normal traditional diplomatic circles, a president wouldn't say that even if he thought it. But this president's really candid. He's really transparent. He says what everyone's thinking. And that people won't say in polite society, but it's just true. So good for him.
Yeah. And of course, part of the deal of being a senior politician, I would include the office of Mayor of London as a senior position, is that in this respect, you're not partisan. I mean, you are, you know, are we seriously saying that mayors will only be kind and polite to people whose politics they support? I mean, that would be ridiculous.
Right. I mean, I think Sadiq Khan should be much more diplomatic, frankly. And you know, look, he gets it. You know, he's in a way started this fight with President Trump, but I do also think that he didn't just disagree with the president. He called him a fascist. He called him a racist, and all the other list of idiocy that the people frequently on the left make up about the president. So, you know, it's not a surprise.
Indeed. And of course, you know, it's not just about, you know, Trump is not having a pop because it's somebody of the left. I mean, he meets Keir Starmer on a fairly regular basis. And, you know, they disagree fundamentally on pretty much everything, I would imagine. But they seem to more or less get on okay.
Absolutely. And he just met with Mamdani in the White House a few weeks ago. So, look, the president will talk to anybody, and he wants to be diplomatic. He wants to get things done. He's got the voters or the people in mind. And so if he has to ruffle a few feathers, fine. If he has to meet with people that people don't like, he'll do that too. You know, just to, you know, he's got what's in the best interest of the people in mind.
Yeah. Another story I wanted to run past you, Greg, while you're with us. All tourists, including those from Britain, will have to undergo social media screening before being allowed entry into the United States. This is under plans being considered by Border Force in the US. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just another layer of bureaucracy. So by nature, I don't like it. However, if it keeps illegal migrant criminals out of the country, or even legally migrant, you know, if you're trying to get into the country on a visa and you have, you know, a really storied record, or you're an extreme and a threat of violence or an extremist on social media, I don't know, that's going to be hard to police, Ian. I kind of agree with it in terms of the outcome. If that means there are going to be fewer people killing Americans in the country, I'm all for it. However, I think, you know, it's a slippery slope, and next thing you know, they're going to be doing the same thing on citizens. And I think with this whole threat to free speech that we're seeing in Europe and here in the UK, as well as we saw in the United States 4 years ago, I'm really averse to anything that starts, you know, looking at social media or people's
and also,
personal history.
Correct. People write all sorts of trash on social media. They don't always mean it. But there are reports that this has already happened. There's one French scientist who apparently was turned away at the border after messages that reflect hatred towards Mr. Trump and can be described as terrorism, so that were found on his phone. So, I mean, that's almost kangaroo court territory, isn't it? Some Border Force guy goes, that's very anti-Trump. Sounds very mean.
Yeah, I think I want to make sure that the right to say mean things about people is preserved, right? And so I think everybody's got a little scar tissue because of Charlie Kirk and the assassination attempt on the president, because both of those assassins had really kind of weird social media history, and they were already on the FBI radar. But I don't think that's a reason to start, you know, social media policing everybody that's coming in. By the way, coming in legally and going through the right process, getting a visitor's visa or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely. Greg, great to have you on. Thank you as ever. Greg Swenson, he is the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Thank you to him. That is, I mean, these are reports that tourists, including those from Britain, will have to undergo a social media screening before allowed entry into the United States. I mean, if that was to manifest itself, that would put Trump's America among the top, almost at the top of the league of anti-free speech, which is kind of curious, because one of the criticisms he makes, and Elon Musk and people like that, who, you know, has a sort of love-hate relationship now with Donald Trump, is that the UK is the sort of famous anti-speech place because of stuff you say on social media. Should be able to say anything on social media. Well, yeah, you might, but then you might not be able to get into the country that actually owns most of social media. So that would be extraordinary. We do have to live in a different world now, though, and I think this is reasonable in terms of what you can say on social media. I think people have run away with the idea that you should be able to say anything. And I kind of, like 99% of me, agrees with that. But of course, we know you can't libel someone. You can't threaten to kill someone, you can't start a riot on social media no more than you would start a riot by putting posters up or delivering leaflets. That would already be. So if you get into that kind of territory, and you know, the Joey Barton case, I thought was probably fascinating and really compromise some of what I thought. The two football pundits, can't quite get my head around that. Jeremy Vine, who was called, quote, a bike nonce by Joey Barton. But it actually wasn't just that. There was a bit more than that. So where do you go? And nobody saw that and thought, oh, that means, in this context, paedophile. Nobody thought that. Everyone thought, oh, it's a bike nonce. Like, I'm trying to think of another comparison where you are addicted to a certain way of life. Jeremy Vine likes riding a bike. He used to take a lot of videos of his bike rides and cars doing bad things to bikes or vice versa, whatever. But he didn't just say that. He said so much more than that. And then, of course, it's not what the individual has said, it's then the pylon of what individuals have said. You know, they start saying, well, you know, we should go around his house and don't let him near primary schools or anything like that. And, you know, making comparisons with Rolf Harris and goodness knows who else. It starts to get where there's a pylon. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people here, not just, you know, a few characters, hundreds of thousands of people piling on to the same thing. At what point do you say that is surely that's a criminal offence? That has to be a criminal offence when you get to that stage where what you are saying has gone beyond free speech and you are essentially encouraging almost an amphitheatre of bullying of one person. And that is the world we're in now. So do you have to be careful? Should you be careful? In an ideal world, no, because we'd all be responsible. But unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world, and that's why Joey Barton ended up in court. I mean, the Fred and Rose West stuff, not sure about that. There is such a thing as dark satire. Let's go to Jason in Sevenoaks on the ECHR issue. Jason, good afternoon to you.
Hi, afternoon, Ian. So I think the ECHR thing's a red herring. And the reason is because the rest of Europe has no issue deporting rapists, murderers and thieves. An imam in France started talking about how terrible France was and how it should be, how France should be destroyed and become a part of the caliphate. He was on a plane the same afternoon. Yeah. We have an activist left-wing judiciary, and the ECHR is just the current vector they're using for it. If we got rid of the ECHR, they'd find another one. And the basic problem is that the elected elite are scared of not being seen to be kind. Mm-hmm. And the test that we should have for immigration is, is this person going to be financially beneficial to the UK as a whole? There might be other exceptions if they're particularly great scientists or particularly good at something. But is this person going to be beneficial to the UK? Not will being in the UK be beneficial to this person? And that's the issue we have today, is that the judiciary don't want to be called racist, the elite, the police don't want to be called racist, the state doesn't want to be called racist. It's okay. It's a very particular kind of racism, isn't it? It's okay to be ethno-masochistically racist and hate people that are Western European or English. You just can't hate anyone that's not English.
Yes. There is that sort of sense, isn't there?
It comes from a kind of a misplaced historic, culturally revisionist white guilt thing. Yeah. So they're so riven with post-colonial guilt. Oh, we invaded that country 300 years ago. So what's wrong with all of those people coming here now? And the thing is that the politicians over the last 30 or 40 years have forgotten the fact that they are there to serve us, not the other way round. And it's supposed to be a representative democracy. They're supposed to represent our views, and they're not doing that because they disagree with them.
Yeah.
Now, instead of just saying, well, we disagree with that, and allowing us to vote based on finding someone who agrees with what we want to do, they're just basically lying and saying, well, we'd love to reduce immigration down to the tens of thousands, but if we do that, we'll have to be unkind to someone whose kid likes chicken nuggets or
Yeah.
who's better off in a council house on benefits in South London.
That's right. I mean, I don't know how anybody comes to these conclusions, but that's exactly what we've got at the moment. And so, I mean, we can all agree that's a flipping nonsense. Listen, Jason, I have to move, but thank you very much for that great call. Nick says, we aren't in Europe. The ECHR is meaningless. We most definitely are in Europe. It's our continent, of course. We're not in the EU. The ECHR has nothing to do with the EU. It is often an inaccurate conflation. The ECHR is 75 years old, signed in 1950, goes way back, predates the EU, and we were part of the original architects of it. Not all of it, but some of it. Churchill and the like were, had their paw prints all over it, and it meant something at some time. So it's not anything to do with the EU. It's way beyond and much bigger than that. But do we now leave it, or do we just modernise it, as Starmer says? Andrew's in Hertfordshire on this same point. Andrew, what have you got for us?
Yeah, you've had a lot of good callers, and it's interesting. The reality is the pull factor.
Yeah.
You just have to kill that stone dead. And then we don't ever go to the ECHR. What our judges do is they look at the precedent that's been set. It's the ultimate appeal court for us in relation to these matters, and they just go, well, if we took it there and gave it a run, we'd lose. So they just give in. And that's where indefinite leave to remain came from. The way round it is to say to someone, if you look at Pakistan at the moment, they say all those people over there that don't like the current government, send them to us so we can torture them and hang them and do terrible things to them, and we'll take the criminals. So all you have to do is say, right, India and Pakistan, no flights to the UK at all ever until you take your criminals, and then do the same for all the other countries. You can't come here until you take back all the criminals and all the illegal immigrants. And like you said, you have to do something big and bold.
Would that, and I'm just trying to think of what, I don't know, some lawyer, not a lefty lawyer, just an objective lawyer would say. Would the argument be, well, if you did that, then you create another diplomatic crisis because we'd end up losing trade, it would cost us billions, and, just for the sake of sending some, dodgy criminal back to whichever country that you've selected, India or Pakistan in this case?
Take a little look at that video of that girl and those two parasites that got hold of her.
Yeah.
I don't need for trade with those types of countries.
No, I mean that's and Afghanistan. We don't have a returns arrangement with Afghanistan, which is extraordinary, for obvious reasons. But we don't. So we couldn't even return these people back to Afghanistan, even if we wanted to, which seems bizarre.
Well, we could say to other nations, or we could say to the RAF, which are wonderful people who fly very nice planes when it suits them, and they dress fantastically in their loafers.
Yep.
Now, on there, cable-tied, blindfolded, shaved, we'll drop you off somewhere near where the Taliban are. Just get on with it. We just need to act like that. And then all the ones that are a problem that are over here think, right, that's what they're doing to people they get hold of. We're off to Europe. And they would go. And that's what Trump did.
Yeah.
And that's what Trump did. You saw those pictures, the videos. They were in white shorts, white T-shirts, dragged into a jail. Their heads were shaved, and he broadcast that across America. And then all those South American criminals, they said, right, we're back over the Mexican border. We are not hanging around for this.
Yeah. It was just a shame for the ones that weren't criminals who got caught up and had a crew cut in the for their troubles. Listen, Andrew, thank you for that. Andrew in Hertfordshire. So a tough approach. We keep talking in so many areas of life. We need to recalibrate the way we do business, like an overhaul of Western thinking, from industrial relations to intergovernmental arrangements over things like deportations, and the whole thing. It's hung around like a bad smell with too many bad points to them. It needs redoing. The landlord we spoke to, Andy Lennox, a little earlier, great caller. The government are absolutely crushing the hospitality industry, including pubs, which is why they've got the No Labour MPs in Pubs campaign going, which I find hilarious, but there is a serious underpinning to it because they don't understand the damage they're doing. and they're just taxing the life out of everything. He's making 14p a pint. The government are making £5.50 from the same pint. Something's wrong with all of that. Sell too many items on Vinted and they want your national insurance number. Something is wrong with that. And of course, the point we raised earlier when it comes to bureaucracy and people or local authorities, politicians banging their noses into your business, the council that have told some owners, particularly those living in flats, they can't put a Christmas wreath on their door because it's a communal area and it breaches health and safety. Giovanna got in touch and says, yep, no bench, no barbecue, no feeding the birds, no shoes outside your house, nothing to cheer up communal areas at all. Nothing. I can understand if you want to put a lawnmower outside your door, that might be a bit tricky and it's dark and the bulb's gone in the communal corridor. I get that. But a wreath on your door at Christmas, is that really going to be troubling? 0344 499 1000. Don't go away if you're hanging on. Let's go to the voice of doom. This was the voice we played you before the news. Have we got a right answer? Have a listen.
Instead of searching for work.
These are some of the guesses. Enoch Powell. Again, every day, Enoch Powell. It's not Enoch Powell. Keith Joseph, Gerald Kaufman, Oswald Mosley. No. Betty Boothroyd. It isn't. Ernest Bevin. Clement Attlee, William Beveridge, William Hartnell, who was the first Doctor Who, of course. Don't think he was a politician. No. Keir Hardie, Quentin Hogg, Norman Tebbit. No, we haven't got a right answer, which means it rolls over. Day 5. It's back tomorrow. This is Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of there quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Steve in East Yorkshire says Starmer knows that Labour is not going to win the next general election and therefore is conducting a scorched earth policy to destroy the country and have a complete basket case for Farage to inherit and deal with. Either that or he's lost his marbles. I think, to be fair, it's actually rather simpler than that, because I tend to want to agree with nearly everything Steve just said. I actually just think they're hopeless. I just think they're inept. There's no real underpinning of like a furnace in their belly to get things changed. They've ticked boxes that sort of left-wing students tick. Yeah, what can we do? Can put up the taxes. Yeah, if you run a business, put up the tax. Landlords, they're evil old gits, aren't they? Because they don't have roofs on their house and let people starve to death. So let's tax them out of existence. It's all rules and regulations. Yeah, because the government run things. So let's do that. Social media, digital ID. Oh yeah, that's another good idea, isn't it? Because then we can control people. Why? We don't know really. We just want to control them because we're lefties. It's kind of what we do. Georgina is down in London. Georgina, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon and a happy Christmas to you, Ian.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it to everybody just to annoy the wokerati.
Yeah,
So
you can say it now, can't you? And it's like, is there actually a date? I've never known this. Is there a date that you can say Happy Christmas, where it's bad luck to say it before a certain date? I've never known the rules on that. I don't care either. But if you say it in November, does your arm fall off or something? I don't know. What's the deal?
No, they just think I was going senile, Ian. That's what they think if I said it in November. What I rang up about, I've heard a lot of people saying about the ECHR, come out of the ECHR and all the rest of it.
Yep.
And yes, the first step is to come out of the ECHR, but you've got to have the political will to do that, and sadly Labour have not got the political will. Now when we do get out of the ECHR, and it's not that difficult to do that despite what all the Labour politicians are saying, it isn't difficult, then you can start moving forward and getting things done, getting policies in place to deal with migrants when they come over. We're a sovereign country, Ian, and we have the capability and the know-how to do this. Now, as far as sending these people back is concerned, all we've got to do is stop the foreign aid. Stop sending the cash to these countries from where these migrants are coming, Pakistan being the main one. If we stopped the foreign aid and said, look, if you're not going to take these people back, then you will get no money. Cash is king, let me tell you. And if they stop getting the copious amounts of money that our taxpayers are paying these people, they would think twice about letting these people come over. Let me tell you, there would be very harsh repercussions. So we've got to stop the cash. The Labour are very good at spending our money. They're very good. And when they run out, they come back to the public purse, which is a taxpayer, to take more cash. Now, we've got to a position now where we've got no more to give them because we are now living from hand to mouth as a country. We're in debt up to our eyeballs. It's going to be our grandchildren that pay this debt. And let me tell you, every Labour government, since I can remember, and that's a long time, Ian, have bankrupted this country, and this Labour government is going to be no different for all the lies they're telling. And let me tell you, they are pathological liars. For all the lies they're telling, they are running this country and the people of this country into the ground, and we can take no more. And there's got to come a time when we say enough is enough. You are going into my pocketbook no longer. There's no more money to give.
Can you run all that past me again, Georgina?
Of course.
Listen.
You start from Merry Christmas.
Listen, I know. Yeah, let's start there. Listen, you've been fabulous as ever. Wonderful monologue from Georgina down in London. This in from Dave. The only people this government will be tough on is British taxpayers. There's got to be another way. The bit that I do find interesting about Labour, they could have just literally put the top rate of tax up to like 50p and got away with it. Would that not have just instantly raised everything they need to raise? I mean, it would have annoyed a lot of people, but they could have just done that if they wanted to. But instead of going, well, we can do this, but this is going to affect hospitality, and we've got tax here, and what about going around and going, right, all the tax, pint, cost of a pint, which is now, what's the cheapest pint around the UK? I don't know, Finn, what's the cheapest you paid for a pint in a, maybe about £4. You might be lucky to get a £4 pint somewhere. Not unusual, certainly down in London, to pay £8 for a pint. Pretty standard, actually. If you go somewhere that's like a venue within London. You might even pay more than that. You were at the O2 the other, was it £9 a pint, I think, over there. £9 for a flipping pint, you dirty thieves. They love it. You'll probably find a few venues where it's even more. I was reading a piece on Centre Parks today. I think Centre Parks, which is quite an expensive place to go anyway for a holiday, I think it's £8 a pint in Centre Park. If they just got it to the point where pints were just half the price they were, and those little areas, you think if the government released up all that freedom you would give to business and innovation and encouragement to do better, man alive, wouldn't that be fantastic? Stephen says, you've got to love a conspiracy theory. That bunch couldn't agree on a lunchtime menu, never mind agree on a new world order, says Stephen in Belfast. That's very true. That was the WEF discussion we had a little earlier. Of course, what the WEF is a lobby group and an interest group for global people who think globally. And that's fine, it's not North Korea, as I always seem to say. If you believe that we are best served globally, then you would have a WEF. And Vince also messaged me and said, does your caller realise there's more than just one WEF with different... Yes, there are. There's many global organisations that sit together. I mean, you can count the obvious ones like the United Nations. Slightly different animal, but equally should be questioned and held to scrutiny. But it is true. I mean, these are people that believe that the global order of things, which is why the whole purpose of those organisations, like the WEF, is to bring together politicians and business and leaders of industry, so that you can morph it up and then you get everybody talking and go, yeah, well, this is the best way to serve. You need mobile phones with certain things within it because it will be better for the future, meaning it's better for their companies. And then politicians go, we don't know anything about running anything, so yeah, we'll agree with you. So there's that kind of thing going on. But there's more than one, and there's lots of different global groups out there. 0344 499 1000. Back with more from you coming next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, we hope Julia's back tomorrow. She wasn't too well today, but back in the big chair at 10 a.m. here on Talk. And also this, as I alluded to earlier, Keir Starmer has today launched a 10-year plan with £500 million worth of investment to make sure youth services get revived. What does he specifically mean by that? And will it work? What will it gain? These are fair questions. Let's speak to Chris McGovern, chairman for the Campaign for Real Education. Afternoon to you, Chris. I mean, it's it's like the word breakfast club. I hear these words come out quite a lot. You sort of need a bit more information around them, what they're going to achieve, and does the cost work? Is it even enough money? And, you know, if it is enough money, what are the results going to look like? So on the face of what we know, this 10-year youth plan and 500 million quid doesn't sound an awful lot, frankly, in the way these things tend to work. But it's a moral mission to reverse a lost decade. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Well, we've certainly got a problem with young people. They have problems. We already have something called the National Citizenship Service, which is now going to be disbanded. That was supposed to support young people. Look, our campaign group are always going to support youth opportunities, and we're going to support youth clubs and so forth, so that's good. But I would say, you know, we've got some of the unhappiest children in the world, according to the Children's Society. Our kids are more unhappy than the kids in Romania, Brazil, South Africa, and so forth. I don't think it's about throwing money at the problem. Obviously, we do need youth clubs. It's not about throwing money at the problem. It's more fundamental than that. I mean, if I was looking at the situation over a 10-year span, as Keir Starmer is, I'd look first of all at parents. If there's any money around, we need to give perhaps tax breaks to mums or dads to stay at home when those kids are very young. That would be a great move forward, support family life. Two, I would apply the same laws and rules to the purchase of smartphones as we apply to alcohol. In other words, I'd ban them until they're 18. That would support parents, and it would get rid of the problem of social media and all the rest of it, because they wouldn't have access now. Yeah. I know my critics will say, well, you know, they'll get around that. Yeah, they get around alcohol. They get around murder. We still have laws against these things. So we want to support parents in that sense. And, you know, I think probably we've got to look at the broader picture of how we can help these children. Many of them are unhappy. I think what the Germans are doing, they're going to introduce voluntary national service, military service. We need a form of service to the community. It was John Kennedy, president, who said, don't ask what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. We live in critical times. A lot of young people want to be challenged. They'll rise to the challenge. So I think some form of national service, whether it's military or community, would be a great thing. So 3 solutions. Yeah. Help parents to stay at home. Stop selling them smartphones till they're 18, and have some sort of voluntary national service. That would probably be better. But look, I'm not against what Starmer's doing. By all means, have more youth clubs, but we need to do more than that.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about giving 500,000 more young people access to trusted adults and online safety resources. I don't quite know whether this is about vulnerable kids in that respect who need help. Maybe there's something in that. Apprenticeships to receive equal respect and opportunity as university routes, ensuring parity for vocational pathway. How many years have we heard that one, Chris? You know, that, oh, we want to get all vocational. And then you speak to people in some schools and they say, actually, our school only really encouraged university because they were, you know, the Ofsted boys quite like that a little more than they do, you know, you becoming a hairdresser or a car mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, we're all in favour of motherhood and apple pie, and to some extent what the government are proposing is rather nebulous. Yep. Yeah, it might make a slight difference at the margin, but there are fundamental issues, and we've got to deal with those. You know, I've been in India, for example, in schools in India, but they don't have anything. They're sitting on the floor, and they haven't got a chair. They're sitting on the floor, and yet their standard is about the same as ours. Yeah, and they're happy. They want to be in school. They're motivated. And in Europe, you can go to and you look at even Romania is a good example. Happy kids. Estonia, which we don't hear much about in any program. Estonia, not the richest country in the European Union, but miles ahead in terms of its academic performance. You know, they're competing with Korea and with Hong Kong. And
do we know why that is, Chris? Is anybody sort of drilled down on that one?
Well, the reason is that they have a more traditional approach to education. They have a teacher standing at the front of the class teaching the kids, not kids sat around tables, half of them with their backs to the teachers. We do need, if we can raise the quality of education and particularly improve vocational education, give those kids a future. In my view, we should stop the national curriculum at 14. And then we should say, right, you can go on either an academic pathway, which is great for some kids, or a vocational pathway. If you tell a kid you're going to learn to be a bricklayer or a hairdresser or a roofer, they'll work. They'll be engaged by that. Yeah. If you say you're going to study Shakespeare, much as I love Shakespeare, not interested. So we've got to make a better curriculum, and dealing with it the way they're dealing with it at the moment isn't good. We've got a problem in education. We have to raise standards. We have to enthuse kids. And you know what? We need some leadership, and we need great teachers in our school. And if that means paying teachers more, pay the great teachers more. And the majority of staff in schools aren't teachers, so cut back and some of the administrative staff.
Yeah, good point. Chris, love it. Bit of back to basics, I think, within all of that. Chris McGovern, chairman for the Campaign for Real Education. What has gone... I mean, the smartphone, when you point the finger at the smartphone, I do wonder about smartphone. A friend of mine a couple of years ago took the smartphone from his daughter. She was about 14 at the time. And she squealed like a slaughtered lamb, his words, for hours. I mean, for hours. It was like somebody going cold turkey, like having heroin removed from them, despite the fact they're a functioning addict. It was horrific. He said he thought he'd committed some form of child abuse in taking this phone away. And it got to the point where they eventually came to a negotiation that she could have it back in an hour. He thought he was taking it away for a week. And he thought, well, if I don't, what's she going to do? And the thing I come back to on this, and I know I'm obviously not 14 anymore, and I haven't been 14, it was many, many years ago that I was 14. Finn, our producer, is nearer to that age. He's 15, so he understands what's going on. This is the bit I don't get. So my mate's daughter, who I know, she's a little bit older now, and a lovely girl, and her mates. If you see them together, obviously they're sitting there on the... You see her walking down the road, she's on her phone. I came back from work the other day, and this particular girl, it was pouring hard. She was walking down the road. So we live near each other. And I stopped, said, do you want to lift back? She went, oh, that's kind, thank you. She was on her phone, and she got in the car, and I thought... So I said, oh, how's it going? how's college and all the rest of it? She was on her phone, and I thought, it's a bit weird, isn't it? Because I know it's literally like a 30-second walk, 30-second drive. But I'm sitting next to you in my own car and I've just given you a lift. And this went, oh, sorry, I just replied to messages. What does a 14-year-old talk about on, when they're messaging, whether they're doing it through a Snapchat format, whether they're doing it through just WhatsApp? What have you got to talk about at 14? I don't understand it. Look, I have been 14, so I know. 14-year-olds are really uninteresting people. They've got sod all to give to anyone. They've got no stories, no anecdotes, absolutely nothing. You are a barren wasteland, mostly a vacuous chamber of literally zero contribution to the world of interest, to politics. You're nothing to give, all right? You're 14, for God's sake. Nothing. You are of no interest. Even your own parents aren't that interested in you. That's the point of being 14. It's a phase of invisibility. So what are you talking to each other about? Just did some stocks and shares. What? No. You're not that. Did you watch the football? No. What is it? Oh, he's a bit tasty, isn't he? Might be a bit of that. Yeah, I get it. Beyond that, what are you talking about at 14? There's not... Finn, number one on the list. If you had to say Finn was 14 10 years ago, what would you have said was number one subject, or was it kind of diverse? I don't even... Yeah, he says girls, mostly. Would that be it? Would it mostly be that? What happened at school that day? Why do you want to talk about that? You finished school. Finn's saying there's a lot because you're 14. There's nothing. There's nothing. You are deeply uninteresting. You're 14. I haven't got a 14-year-old yet. I've got a very interesting 11-year-old. But when he becomes 14, he will, of course, descend into being uninteresting for that year. That's the point. Best ignored. Let them grow spots and other bits and pieces, and that's the end of it, right? Nothing to... What would you talk to your friends? OK, let's give people that are 14 the benefit of the doubt. You might have some things to talk to your friends about. For 18 hours a day? Seriously? Man alive. Dom says, love your output on the 14-year-olds, Ian. Very well said. What a ludicrous bunch of human beings 14s are. 13s, yeah, you're all right. You're just getting into that tricky phase where we go, I wouldn't want to be you again. Oh, your voice is broken, son. That's a bit weird. What's it doing? It's doing all that funny thing. Yeah. And a friend of mine gave his daughter a hard time when she had to wear a bra for the first time. Didn't give her a hard time, he said, but he just did stuff like, how's your bra? And it's enough to send her up the flipping wall. Poor thing. But 14, yeah, that's a grim old existence, isn't it? Let's go to Robert in Hertfordshire, who's not 14. I don't think so, Robert. I don't know. Maybe you've kept a secret from us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, that was a rant you had there, mate, weren't it? I've known you for quite a few years.
Do you know what? I was just, as I was saying it, I was literally thinking, what do you say to each other for... OK, if you were on it for half an hour, you could go, yeah, we message each other about school. We message each other about boys or girls. 10 hours? Well, what do you do for 10 hours? What do you want to talk about?
I was 14 in the 60s, you know, it was different. We was like getting pop groups together and... You know, it was exciting times. I'll be honest with you. I really do think that the mobile phone is the Antichrist. I really do. In a way, you think of how many people it's killed. You think of how many people it's caused depression. You know, there's more bad to it than good. And going on your other thing, what I would like to say, this might amuse you, but I've come up with a money spinning scam that you might want to have a little bit of the action. Now, it's the face recognition cameras, OK?
OK.
What they've done, the Labour Party, the list is growing of all the things they brought out that wasn't on the referendum. I mean, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. All nasty things, and not one of them on that, and especially not the facial recognition. But I've got a way over this.
Go on.
And if you want somebody, right, this is what we do. I'm going to get a couple of 100,000 Keir Starmer masks made, OK? Now, I'm going to get them made in Taiwan because that will wind the Chinese up.
Yep.
And what you do is you have one in your glove compartment, one in your pocket, and then when you're walking past one, you just stick it on. Now, this would be funny because all the Antifa people, when you go to their marches, say, I'm not taking my mask off until you take your one off. I think it's a great idea.
And everybody would look like Keir Starmer, which would be great on the Crime Watch show, wouldn't it? When they show the mug shot.
I mean,
we're looking for 5 men that all look like this. It's just 5 pictures of Keir Starmer. Love it. Robert, good, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. When I was 14, right, just a final point, you spoke to each other the next day unless you sort of met up, you know, with your mates after school or whatever. Why did 14-year-olds back then not have pagers? Why was that not a thing? I appreciate you can't send a photo of your gonads on a pager. Maybe that was the answer. These ceased to be of any use. It could be that. But nobody said, there was never a kid with a pager. Oh, I've got a pager. Look at that. You know, you'd look at them as if they were, what are you, 87, mate, with a pager? It's got a flip. Hey, Liz, you heard Nick, he's got a flipping pager. What a weirdo. There would be no kudos or credibility in having a pager. Particularly, it would be troublesome if you were the only person with one. That would prove to be doubly useless, I guess. What do you say to you? What's the perpetual conversation among 14-year-olds? Maybe we'll do a whole show in that. 0344 499 1000.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. And then there's 15-year-olds. No, let's not go there. Mary is in Cyprus. Not on teenage angst, Mary, but on masks. Are you masked up over there in Cyprus, Mary?
No, some people are, but we haven't been told to wear masks.
That's good to hear.
But what I wanted to say was, if wearing a mask is so controversial, how come surgeons and theatre nurses wear masks all the time when they're operating?
I think they have different reasons for wearing masks, don't they? In terms of you don't want to spit on a patient's, spleen when you're when you're carrying out an op.
Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's to keep... They could be spreading germs as well, couldn't they? I mean, I don't know. It just occurred to me that, I personally, my personal point of view is, I think they're sensible. And if you want to wear one and you think it's doing you good, then wear one.
I don't mind. I have no problem if somebody wants to wear it. It's entirely up to them. I don't want to be compelled to wear one if it's not going to, clearly stop me from getting, COVID or this nasty strain of flu that's mooching around the place.
There is still a bit of COVID around here, because a friend of mine had to give up her dance class because she got COVID.
Did she? Yeah, that's a bit grim. Yeah. I hope she's back tapping soon.
Well, yes, actually, funnily enough, she was at that particular day, it was tap dancing.
Oh, was it? There you go, you see. I'm right. I know what they do over there in Cyprus of a certain age. Listen, Mary, thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. Peter, is it Peter Cardwell? Peter Cardwell at 4 o'clock this afternoon? Oh, it's Alex Phillips this afternoon at 4 o'clock. 7 o'clock, Kevin O'Sullivan. In fact, before Kev, of course, or within Kev's show. Don't forget Isabel Oakeshot's documentary. It's called The Undercover Migrant. It airs tonight at 7 o'clock. Have a little listen to this.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning all around the clock to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, all at every key point, the police, the French military police and the French police were, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
7 o'clock tonight, you can hear all of that. It's absolutely gripping, I can tell you that much. A lot of work has gone into this. Isabel Oakeshott presents The Undercover Migrant tonight from 7 right here on Talk. Daryl says, maybe we could strike a deal with Russia to send all illegal immigrants to them. They could use them in the army or send them to Siberian salt mines. The boats would stop next week. If you thought you were going there, I reckon you wouldn't give it a risk, would you? One here says, Donald Trump has every right to condemn Sadiq Khan, the State of London. It's now an embarrassment to the country. I hear that as well, and I don't think Donald Trump is wrong if he wants to condemn someone. I find it more interesting that Sadiq Khan, back in the day, wanted to sort of write Donald Trump off as some kind of Nazi because he disagreed with him. And it's beyond the remit of your office of mayor to decide, well, I like this person or I don't like this person, I'm going to react to them based on their politics. So if we have somebody over who is, you know, kind of a socialist, we'll enjoy their company, and if they're not, we won't. And I don't think that's really the way that the office of mayor, and it's a big gig, the Mayor of London, I don't think it's the way you would do business. Honestly, if somebody put a gun to my head and said, what has Sadiq Khan brought to London? I could have no idea, other than more CCTV, that President Xi could even think of. I mean, it's that bad. I mean, I'm talking about the cameras that are there for your cars and for your exhaust fumes, and whether you're bringing a granny into town. I think there's another Grand Cam that films that. There's a cost for all this stuff. I mean, it's astonishing. I couldn't really think of a positive. Alex, could you? You know London very well. Neither of us are from London, like most people, but we know the place well. Could you say, right, Sadiq Khan's #1 contribution to London as a mayor, what would it be?
Those Ramadan lights.
Oh, they were good.
Yeah, I know. They outdid our Christmas ones, didn't they? And the countdown did as well.
The countdown.
Did good on that, didn't he?
Did good on the countdown.
Did good on the Ramadan
fireworks.
Lights countdown. We did everything. Yeah,
fireworks.
Made Regent Street look properly.
Looks great over there.
Dubai.
Yeah, Dubai. Yeah,
the Dubai of Europe, it looks like.
It's like being in Dubai, frankly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In some respects. Thanks. Alex Phillips is here after the news. It's going to be a big show, Alex. What's going on?
Well, I'm doing news and stuff.
News and stuff?
Yeah.
What are you like with your news and stuff?
I know. I'm going to make you drag. I'm going to keep you on your toes on this handover.
Go on, give me some questions about the news.
What did you like in the news today?
What did I like in the news today?
What did you enjoy?
Well, what I enjoy, the subjects that we pick, is the contribution from people who phone in and communicate, and the messages.
Who's your favourite caller?
Who's
pick your favourite caller.
Dodgepot McDougall.
He's not a caller.
You don't know Dodgepot?
We haven't got Dodgepot McDougall.
Bobbin Arbroath. OK.
Bobbin Arbroath. That sounds like a plausible person.
It does, doesn't it? Yes. No, he's my go-to Clapham omnibus example, Bobbin Arbroath.
Arbroath Smoky, as his mates call him.
Arbroath Smoky, yeah.
That's what his mates call him.
Are you allowed to have a favourite caller?
I've got a few favourites, I reckon. Yeah, there's Herbie in Harrow. We love a bit of Herbie.
Herbie's always good.
There's Grace in London.
When we went out to dinner, when you kind of, for some reason, snuck out of going out to dinner with us, do you remember a little while ago?
Oh, that was when I was back under the thumb of an evil man.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah, lawyers are listening. He was lovely.
Yeah.
Wasn't. But yes, that time, we actually had a discussion of favourite callers at that.
Did we?
Yeah.
Because we have got our, we've got some people who...
We just had Georgina on,
So I sat on the train yesterday and I met a lovely man called